Excuse me. We're going to call this meeting to order. This is the continuance for case 2021B for the Hampden Self-Storage LLC. First thing I'm going to do is read the updated CDC guidance. The updated CDC guidance continues to state that individuals who are fully vaccinated may, as a general matter, resume many of the activities that they engaged in prior to the pandemic without wearing a mask or staying 6 feet apart, except where otherwise required by federal, state, or local laws, rules, or regulations. In response to the recent spread of the Delta variant, however, the CDC's updated guidance does recommend that even fully vaccinated persons wear masks or face coverings when indoors if other risk factors are present. In the light of information provided by the CDC, and in order to maximize protection of vulnerable individuals from the Delta variant, the Department of Public Health now advises that a fully vaccinated person should wear a mask or face covering when indoors and not in your own home if you have a weakened immune system, or if you are at an increased risk for severe disease because of your age or an underlying medical condition, or if someone in your household has a weakened immune system, is at an increased risk for severe disease, or is unvaccinated. That said, I'm going to introduce the board. Myself, John Matthews, as the interim chair, Jason Barroso, Madison Pixley, Heather Beatty, and is I'm saying it right? Beatty. Okay, sorry, Heather. And Christina Roeder. Okay. Joanne Fiore is the administrative assistant, and she's on my right here. We have some business that needs to be taken care of. Heather and Christina are new members to the board, and they need to sign some certifications, hopefully. I'm going to ask you, okay, you know what I'm going to ask you if you review this case. So in accordance with the Mullins rule, I ask that you sign date. No, I'm not taking any questions.
Will you explain the process after to?
I will.
Okay, thank you.
So what was just signed was certification, Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 23D, adjudicated hearings, attendance by municipal board and committee commission members, voting disqualification. And it states, under the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 39, Section 23D, I, the assigned person, hereby certify I have examined all evidence, received and viewed the video recording of the missed session held on July 28th, 2021 for special permit case 2021B, requesting the construction of a self-storage facility to be located at 2 Summers Road, Hampden, Massachusetts. Now, I'm going to reread the statement of authority. This was read previously, and I will reread this. The planning board is established under Chapter 40A of the General Laws of Massachusetts and acts in compliance with Chapter 40A under the zoning bylaws of the town of Hampden. Chapter 41 governing the submission and approval of plots of proposed subdivisions and the rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land in Hampden, Massachusetts. I will reread the legal notice that appeared in the paper. The Hampden Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, July 28th, 2021 at 6 p.m. in the Townhouse, 625 Main Street, Hampden, Mass. on the application of Hampden Self-Storage LLC, Daniel P. Garvey, for the special permit and site plan review in accordance with the zoning bylaw, section 10.31, and a special permit for water supply district per section 6.11 to construct a self-storage facility on 5.81 acres of land located at 2 Summers Road. Parcel ID is 12-40-1. Information related to this application is on file in the town clerk's office and is available for review by the public during normal business hours. And again, this was for the board, Judge Robert Howarth, Chair, Hampden Planning Board, and it was published July 8th and July 15th in the Hampden Wilbraham Times. And just to reiterate, reports received from other town departments and agencies. The building inspector is concerned with regards to stormwater. The water table is known to be high in that area. It also seems like a lot of impermeable paving, and the basin is right next to the McNamara house. The second one was from the Board of Health, stated this project is contingent on a passing a perk test and a septic design approval and potable water. The fire chief stated they will require a knockbox key holder for the self-storage, and the chief of police indicated there would be no issue with the storage facility from the police department standpoint. He would just like to make sure that a clear sight of view is kept when pulling out onto the roadway from this location. Any new plantings to be kept out of line of sight of driveways. The town clerk reported there was no outstanding taxes to date. So if I identify you, if I ask you, if you'd like to speak and I choose you, I'm going to need you to identify yourselves. Okay, that said, so the first item that needs to be addressed, okay, and this is a letter. I'm sorry, I'm going to explain. As you heard me say, we operate under Chapter 40A of the Massachusetts General Laws. Chapter 40A is in regards to the subdivision of land in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and in particular, the town of Hampden. Okay, so that said, we have a book in front of me and in front of every one of us, and those are, it contains the general bylaws, which are for the town, okay, rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land, which is another book in itself, the zoning bylaw, which is another book in itself, and we have the aquifer overlay. What we will be talking about tonight is in the zoning bylaw. So in particular, there's a couple of sections that pertain to this, and I read it. Section 6.11, section 10.31, which is about section 10 has the open meeting law, the public hearing, special permit, and 6.11 is the look it up to tell you the truth, right off the top of my head. I'm sorry. But use regulations, okay? Within section 6, there's a table of uses. That's what we'll be using tonight. And section 7, because section 7 is the performance criteria necessary for the called out. The called out project. But everybody good there? Good?
Yes.
No, not ever. I'm sorry. Yeah, Rita. Rita?
What I would like to know from you is, what is the process after tonight? Is this hearing closed?
No.
And then you make your
No.
decision?
No.
What-
I don't foresee us finishing tonight,
Oh,
okay?
there will be another meeting after this?
You know, if
probably?
I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't be sitting here,
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to be honest with you, I don't foresee us finishing up tonight,
Thank you.
okay? All right, so I've got a letter from Don Davenport and the select board. And what it is it's, dear planning board members, I'm sure you are aware of that Hampden Farms LLC, which was administratively, dissolved in 2013, has come to the realization that the application for a special permit for a self-storage units on 2 Summers Road, parcel ID 12-40-0 was potentially defective and is in jeopardy of a legal challenge. Mass General Law, Chapter 156, Section 70 states, a limited liability company administratively dissolved continues in existence but shall not carry on any business except that necessary to wind up and liquidate affairs. Clearly entering into an agreement with Hampden Self-Storage LLC and joining in seeking a special permit was new business, not in compliance with the statute, and should have been rejected as such. So I can continue on if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Okay. No. Sit down. Sit down, please. You spoke, and I will continue. Hampden Farms LLC has filed 8 years of back reports, paid a reinstatement fee of $100 and a fee of $500 for each of the 8 missing annual reports, at which point on August 30th, 2021, the application for reinstatement after administrative dissolution was approved by the Secretary of the Commonwealth, restoring Hampden Farms LLC's ability to conduct business going forward. However, Hampden Farms LLC's reinstatement does not resolve the issue of a potential defective application for a special permit. Hampden Bylaw 10.41 states the current owner of record shall file an application and the required fee. In this case, 2021B, the applicant is recorded as Hampden Self-Storage LLC, Daniel P. Garvey. Neither Hampden Self-Storage nor Mr. Garvey are owners of record. The owner of record is Hampden Farms LLC. If the planning board were to waive the requirement that the application be filed by the owner of record, a question would still remain as to the validity of the application for a special permit. While Hampden Farms LLC's ability to conduct business going forward has been reestablished, there is some question as to whether or not actions taken while administratively dissolved, such as joining in seeking a special permit, are valid. In Superior Court decision, a judge found that an administratively dissolved LLC could not exercise an option to acquire a piece of real estate after it had been reinstated. the LLC had been formed for the sole purpose of acquiring and developing that piece of real estate, but was administratively dissolved prior to the exercising the option. Even though the LLC was reinstated, the court rejected an argument that the LLC's reinstatement could relate back to and cure the solution. Such a remedy may be available for corporations in Massachusetts, but not for LLCs. Therefore, it would seem appropriate for the planning board to give consideration as to whether or not the application should be denied as invalid or have the applicant withdraw without prejudice and resubmit a valid application. I should point out that similar concerns may arise regarding the planning board's approval on May 12th, 2021 of the ANR requested by Hampden Farms LLC, which was essential to this proposed project. At that time, Hampden Farms LLC was administratively dissolved. Lastly, I should also point out there may be some issues with the Hampden Farms LLC's recent filings with the Secretary of the Commonwealth. Throughout the updated filings of the location or addresses where the records for Hampden Farms LLC are maintained is listed as 16 Summers Road, Hampden. And the address of the resident agent is also listed as 16 Summers Road, Hampden. As you know, 16 Summers Road, Hampden is a vacant building and is owned by a separate and different entity. In fact, a competitor. It might be interesting to determine why that address is being used on an official document unless both parties seeking special permits for self-storage have an agreement of some type. And that was signed Donald Davenport. Now, the applicant, can you address this?
Certainly, I can certainly address it, and I know the owner's attorney is here as well. But section 156, section 70, as you correctly pointed out a few things that I think are important for the board to understand. Number one, the LLC remains in existence. That's clear. Number two, they have the legal authority to wind up and liquidate their assets. In this case, they are signing a purchase and sale agreement to wind up and liquidate assets. They are well within their legal right to liquidate, and clearly the law is clear. They have a right to convey the property, legally convey the property. So by merely signing the application as the owner, they are winding up their affairs and getting themselves into a position to liquidate their assets. In my opinion, and I believe the opinion of the owner's counsel, that is clear in the law, that they are clearly allowed to sign the application as winding up their business and liquidating their assets.
Thank you.
But I can certainly
No, I'm gonna, hold on. Go ahead.
Respectfully, this is also something that we drew to the attention of the applicant earlier this week by email and asked him if he wished to withdraw his application without prejudice so that we could cure this issue beforehand. He indicated that he did not have the interest in doing so. And I had told him, look, if you withdraw it, we won't object to you coming back. But if you continue forward with this application, then we will need to object and we will need to ask that it be substantively denied along with all of the other reasons for substantive denial at tonight's meeting, because at this point, it's cost my clients an awful lot of money to continue defending against this application that has been defective, as you've noted, since its inception. And the information on the Secretary of State's website is crystal clear that the dissolution was effective in 2013. And so none of any of the agreements that they may have made have any effect, notwithstanding the fact that they might be tied to dissolution. That applies to activities perhaps between private parties, but not with respect to public filings in support of an application like this. And so from our perspective, it was void as of the time of the application because they wouldn't have had the authority to even submit the application either through Mr. Garvey or independently.
All set. Counselor, I take
Sure,
it
Steve
you're.
Riley for Hampden Farms LLC.
Okay,
As Attorney Garvey mentioned, there's a section of the statute for LLCs that specifically addresses this. They're allowed to enter into agreements and wind down operations. That's what's happening here. The inaccuracies that have been stated are that this entity is not the applicant. It's very common that owners of properties have to sign off on applications, but it's not a new application that they're seeking. They're merely the seller, and they're merely trying to wind down this business. And clearly, the case law and the statute are going to show that. I don't even think it's a questionable legal issue, and I would encourage you to talk to town council and get an opinion from them.
all right. So I did. Spoke with town council. And the question that I asked was, you have asked us if a special permit application may be denied solely on the grounds that the property owner was administratively dissolved limited liability company LLC at the time the application was signed and filed. It was only signed by the applicant as the owner, not as the applicant. The short answer is no. In my opinion, that a reviewing court would not find reasonable for the planning board to deny the application based solely on the owner's condition of administrative dissolution at the time it was signed in the application as a non-applicant owner. I'm going to tell you, and I stress this, we operate under Chapter 40. That's what the planning board does. What you are asking the planning board is Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 156, happens to deal with LLCs, corporations. We don't deal with that here. You're asking this board to adjudicate, and that might be the wrong word for all you lawyers out there, okay? But that may be the wrong word, but I'm saying we do not do that. That is up to a court, whether it be land court or some other court. I'm not a lawyer, don't intend to be, okay? But we do not adjudicate that type of business, okay? That said,
I have a question.
no. That said, no, sit down. I said no. Now, I'm going to ask you, Mr. Garvey, Counselor, would you like to what I want to say is, would you request to remove the application without prejudice? I'm asking you if you'd like to do that.
I think we're on solid legal grounds, and I would not like to do that. I'd like to move forward with the application.
Very good. Thank you. Yes.
My name is Joe Seville. I live on 11 Meadow Lane. We moved there in 1979, so we're a recent resident of the town. My question regarding this issue is, isn't it the responsibility of the planning board to get a certificate of good standing if an LLC or a corporation applies for a special permit or anything in the town? Isn't it some responsibility of the board to get that?
No.
You
No,
have no responsibility to see if their taxes have been paid?
we do. Taxes have been paid. I said it. So I'm saying no. And that's the short answer for it. Okay? All right. So with that, I'm going to ask the board, we're going to move forward. And do you happen to have your engineer here?
I do.
Excuse me, sir, was that a request for a vote? Is that something that needs to be voted on
No.
by the board, or is that simply an administrative decision that
It's
can
not
be
an
made?
administrative decision. It doesn't require a vote. Okay, we do not adjudicate, as I said, on that chapter of Mass General Law. We're here for Chapter 40B, or Chapter 40. That's all.
Right, but you are required to pass on any question that comes as a board, any question that comes as to the potential viability or other applicability of the application. Is that correct?
It's up to a court. That's up to a court, not here.
Okay, all right.
We're responsible for the subdivision of land in the town of Hampden.
Okay, so for the,
We are not
for
going to
the,
step, we're not going to step outside of that.
so for the appeals record, you've denied a request for a vote on this issue.
You do whatever you want. I'm
Okay.
not gonna ask the board to vote on it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So thank you very much. My name is Daniel Garvey. For the record, my address is 124 Shaker Road, Suite A, East Long Meadow, Mass. And I do have with us our engineer. He's the one who obviously put together the plans that are before you for your consideration. Again, his name is Joseph Penzola. He's from Sherman and Fredericks with the business address of 3 Converse Street, Palmer, Mass. 01069. Joseph, sorry.
And it's
Peznola. Peznola.
Can we call you Joseph?
Call me Joe.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, I appreciate that. All right. What I'd like to do is section 6 of the bylaw. In the table of use, it is a use that requires a special permit review, okay? With that said, there are some performance standards. Get my paperwork that are required. I don't know, you're familiar with this? You are. So I'm gonna ask, we're gonna go through this step by step, okay? Okay, so. Okay, this one here, yeah, this one. Here. Okay, I'm reading from the June 22nd, 2021, Hampden Planning Board. Okay. So the first question, or the first item, all plan drawings and supporting documentations illustrating the proposed project and including in the following information. A site plan was submitted by Sherman and Friday. Am I saying that? Right. Okay. And that plan has been revised originally from this date.
Yes, that was Chairman, in response to your peer review engineers. So,
Good enough. And there are some peer review comments from Ty and Bond. Ty and Bond is a engineering company that the town of Hampden utilizes. They're probably over 700 strong. We utilize them to review data, information, stormwater, anything that we ask them to do as far as sites and soils go. We ask them to review compliance to our bylaws. They have been our engineering firm for quite a while. In full disclosure, one of our members works for Ty and Bond, but not in that area, in a separate area. Like I said, I believe there's 5 or 7 different areas that Ty and Bond is divided up into. So with that said, we'll move on to the next one. The name of the project and the locus date and the scale of the plan, and it is on the plan.
Standards under 6.
I'm sorry. 7, yeah. 7, I'm sorry, section 7.7. So the name and address is on the plan, I believe, on page 1. A single sheet locus plan, a scale of 1 to 100, showing the location of the owner's name of all adjacent properties and those within 300 feet of the property line and zoning. And it says, see the title sheet, which is sheet 1. But that's a, you okay? You're,
Got your using these, John.
that's okay.
Apologies.
No, you're fine. You're fine. go ahead and get back to where you were.
Mr. Chair, do you have an extra copy of those plans? I don't believe we've seen those. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right. So that is shown. Item 5, existing and proposed topography. Existing and proposed topography at 2-foot contour intervals, the location of the wetlands, streams, water bodies, drainage swales, areas subject to flooding, and base flood elevations and unique natural land features. That's on page 2. Item 6, existing and proposed structures, including dimensions and elevations of all exterior entrances and exits. So that is within this set of plans.
correct.
Yeah, okay, and there is, I want to say 7 pages of this. The location of parking and loading areas, public and private ways, driveways, walkways, access and egress points. And access from the East Long Meadow Road via single proposed access driveway, 24 feet wide, and see the plan. Okay, so we have 24-foot driveway.
Right.
Yeah. Three, yeah.
And I believe 4.
So that's an agreement, again, with the performance standards. The location and description of all proposed septic systems per test when necessary, water supply, storm drainage systems, including existing and proposed drain lines, culverts, drainage swales, catch basins, utilities, hydrants, manholes, and lighting fixtures. And see the site plan. Yeah,
It's on page 3 and 4.
page 3.
And 4.
So we've got a few new members.
Understood.
So what I'd like to do is, if you could walk us through, okay, that plan here, which is page 4.
Retention plan?
Yes.
So from the standpoint of compliance with this specific requirement, which is location of,
So,
yep, the location and description of all proposed septic systems. The proposed septic system is located here behind the front building that's closest to East Long Meadow. Water supply is coming from a well that's proposed in the center of the site. And that will only feed to the administrative building, because that's the only building that will have utilities to it. Proposed drain lines, culverts, drain swales, catch basins. Essentially, what we're doing here is a system of catch basins.
Excuse me, I'd like to ask a question.
no,
Can we
sorry.
see? Can we see? We can't see. what he's
Why, nobody here wants it, so why are we going over what the plan is? Why are we going over that?
Go ahead, sir.
No, we don't want it, so
Go
we
ahead,
don't
sir.
really care about what. the
I'll
plan is.
ask you to be removed.
That's part of the process. Just please let them continue.
Go ahead. Sorry
Thank
to
you.
be interrupted.
So the proposal is to collect rainwater through a series of catch basins and pipe it to two infiltration basins, one located along the southern property line and one located up in the northwest. We also treat the drainage through putting it through a proprietary hydrodynamic separator, which is reviewed by DEP for its removal of pollutants and so forth prior to that water going out into the two infiltration basins. Two infiltration basins are interconnected with a series of pipes and a swale. So that's that. Manholes and lighting fixtures that they're shown on the plan, and there's also details for the lights in the detail sheets. And those are all, the lights are full cutoff, which means they only shine where they're prescribed to, so there's no spillage of light. And they're also dark sky compliant, so that they don't emanate light upwards and contribute to light pollution.
Okay.
Point out for me the on-site well again. I believe you pointed right.
It's right,
Okay,
right here.
that's what I thought. Just wanted to clarify.
And we have the protective radius around it and its location relative to adjoining septic system.
Yeah, it has not been drilled yet.
No,
No, nor has a perk test done.
we did some unofficial testing, but we haven't tested with the witness of the Board of Health witness.
Correct. Yes. So you've done some test pits,
We have,
4 of them.
yes, Mr. And
Yeah.
the logs are on sheet 4 in the lower right-hand corner.
Correct.
And the pit locations are indicated on the site, through the site. Test 1, 2, 3, and 4. 2 of the tests are within the infiltration basins as required by Mass DEP.
Right. So, and you did a rather extensive drainage report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we did an initial stormwater management report that shows compliance with Mass DEP requirements and the specific Hampden requirements, which are above and beyond Mass DEP requirements. Those were reviewed by Ty and Bond. They came back with some comments that required us to revise those drainage calculations. We've done so, and we resubmitted those to the board on August 24th.
Yes, and we are in receipt of those. And I believe those are what you have. Yes, okay. And if you have questions, just let me know. Thank you. So, explain to us, if you would, the test pits. They were performed by Neil Jackson on April 26th. That's what's on the plan.
Yes, Mr. Jackson is a certified soil evaluator in the state of Massachusetts, and we went out with a backhoe. They dug test pits that ranged from, it looks like they were 9 to 10 feet deep. They look at the soils down in the test pits for the presence of water seeping into the holes. But they also look for the evidence of high groundwater, and that's a prescribed methodology by the state, by Mass DEP. And they look for what's called redoxamorphic features within the soil that indicates the movement of groundwater in the spring. So it goes up high. It does things within the soils that migrate iron. And there's some biological action in there that occurs that helps that migration, but it leaves spots in the soil. And that way we can tell, we don't just call water where we see it weeping into, but we see where the evidence of the highest water is. And then that becomes our indication, or the water table that we need to use for all our calculations within not only the stormwater, but ultimately that will prescribe the design of the septic system. So we found redoxamorphic features anywhere from 77 inches down to 64 inches down. So it's there, but it's deep. And there's also some topography to the existing site. One of the sites, I think it's TP3, is in the bottom of the lowest portion of the site. So we got a real good indication from that. We went down 10 feet there, so we were pretty deep at that point relative to the surrounding environment.
What elevation is the modeling at the deepest point of the site?
At TP3, we were, redox was down at 60 inches. So that translates to an elevation, a groundwater elevation of 236. And just for kind of reference, the site plan that we're proposing is generally around 249. So water table's down a ways.
Roughly 14 feet, about that, just round numbers. Okay. And that is shown in test pit 3. And as you stated, test pit 3, you have weeping and standing at 77 inches. That means there was some water there, weeping and standing. Is that
Yes.
what that means?
Yeah, we actually had physical water coming into the hole at 77 inches.
Any reason why you wouldn't have dug another pit to check and verify? Is that an anomaly or is that the standard, I'm going to say?
It's the standard from the standpoint, we saw consistency from across the site through the four test pits. Before we go out there, we do check USDA, the Natural Resource Soil Council has mapping. So we kind of know the type of soils that we might be anticipating, the consistency. And then when he gets out there and starts doing the testing, he sees that consistency. If he sees inconsistent, either test pit to test pit or with that mapping, he might increase the number of tests he did.
One question. Is it standard practice to take photos when you're doing these test pits to document where modeling is and where the groundwater elevation is?
Not for us. No.
He is certified and licensed or whatever.
He
Neil
is
Jackson.
a Massachusetts certified soil evaluator, which is a certification bestowed by the state, Mass DEP, after coursework and an exam. And there's also a requirement for continuing education requirements on every 2 years. So
Okay. Did your original plan, and help me out, did the original soils, did Ty and Bond ask you to modify what your, what you felt the conditions were, I'm going to say? And I don't know if I'm using the correct language. Soil type.
they did. There was some disparity, and they thought that this hydraulic soil groups A through D are an indication of the soil's permeability. And the A is the most permeable and D is the least permeable. We had originally used a classification of B because of the test results. They went back to the USDS and RCS mapping and thought that A was better. And you have to understand that basically I think from a conservative standpoint, they thought that if our pre-existing condition model of the drainage system and how the site functions today was done with a highly permeable soil, then it would be the most conservative, because it would assume that the maximum amount of water when it rains soaks into the ground and doesn't run off. And our job is to look at the pre-existing conditions and compare them to the developed condition and make sure no more water is running off the site in the proposed condition when compared to the existing. So when we changed it to using a hydraulic soil group A, then less water was leaving the site, and therefore we needed to hold more water in the proposed conditions so that we could meet the criteria, which is No increase.
No increase. Yes, please.
What if folks didn't understand that? Our engineer is basically holding them to a higher standard than what they stated the soil type was. They believe the soil type was a class B. Our engineer said you need to model it and assume it's a type A because that's what the mapping from USDA says. So that would be the strictest standard that they could be evaluated under, trying to put it into layman's terms. So, but basically, our engineer has made them make a more aggressive or hold them to a higher standard than what the field evidence showed.
And it still was fine.
Yes, it's still fine. Essentially, we look at different storm events and from the, the small storm, a couple inches, all the way up to what's known as the 100-year storm, which is many inches of rain. I think it's 8 inches of rain. And in that 100-year storm, in the existing condition, nothing leaves the site because of the topography and the fact that there's a depression. So in our proposed condition, nothing leaves the site up and through the 100-year storm.
And just to be clear that nothing leaves the site on the surface.
Nothing leaves the site on the surface. We are not going to make it rain more.
Right.
So we are trying to mimic what happens today. Right now, today, nothing leaves the site. If the rain falls, it all goes into the ground. When we finish, the rain falls, it goes into catch basins and through pipes and into our infiltration basins and goes into the ground and nothing leaves the site.
You're okay. No explanation. So I asked our time bond representative, Gene Christie, okay, for a question. I had a couple of questions. And my question is, I had the liberty to be able to look at the other site, 16 Summers Road, okay? So I was able to look at their drainage reports also. And I asked if we could assume that they're consistent throughout and they are, throughout both sites. You didn't have that liberty to see that, and that's okay. But I asked him if the soils on site would be similar in nature, and the challenge, as he said, the challenge here is that different licensed soil evaluators can interpret soil profile in a slightly different way. That's why I asked qualifications, okay? So he is mass certified soil evaluator. Both projects indicate that the sea horizon of the soil as a sand consistent with some variation in actual texture. As far as stormwater analysis goes, both projects performed the hydraulic calculations, assumed a well infiltrating sand, to which I concur. So Ty and Bond concurs with what you spoke about tonight. As for test pit 3 on the 2 Summers Road project, that test pit was performed at the lowest elevation. Okay, between the 2 projects, as it is located within the existing depression on the site. Since that area collects runoff from the majority of the property today and recharges within that depression, the higher groundwater at that location is expected. That's test pit 3. I'm not surprised that evidence of groundwater was not found at the 16 Summers Road project based on the elevations being higher than the 2 Summers Road project. The well-drained nature of the sand is a blessing for both of these projects. I do not expect impacts to neighboring septic or drinking water wells as long as the permeable pavement that's on a different site, okay, is installed properly and not clogged up with sediment during construction. The planning board may wish to consider a third-party review during the construction to observe the permeable pavement. That doesn't apply right now to you, okay? To identify potential practices that may clog the system. And we go on with permeable pavement, okay? He also did want to say there was some. There would be some mound, if you will, and underneath the two retention basins, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. I don't know if you want to throw it now or.
Go ahead.
we get to the
Sure.
topic. Of course. So I actually reached out to the engineer as well.
Okay.
Because I believe at one of our last meetings, someone mentioned they had a 16-foot deep well.
Correct.
So generally speaking, when you're considering these sort of assessments, you're not assuming that folks have a 16-foot deep well. So I actually spoke to her about the assumption that it wouldn't impact.
You spoke to Gene.
Yes,
Yeah.
that it wouldn't impact the neighboring drinking water wells. She did not realize that they were 16-foot wells. So I think we still need to. To me, it looks like there are two wells that are within 100 feet of the infiltration basins. So I think we would need to, we being the town, or the board, we need to field verify the depth of those wells and see what we're actually dealing with there.
Whether it's field verified.
Somebody's gonna, for me to be comfortable, somebody's gonna have to field verify these two wells and show me the depth and potentially construction wells. Otherwise, there's gonna be question in my mind whether or not the infiltration from these basins that are within 100 feet are gonna impact those wells or not.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I might respond. Where are you seeing, we've located the wells from town records and all the septic systems on all the abutting properties. That's
Yes.
something we added to the latest revision.
On sheet, what's that, sheet 4?
This is
Sheet 4, right? Unless I'm reading this incorrectly, there's two wells located on the, yeah, two wells right here located within 100 feet.
I didn't see my well listed on there. Tony with Zero Clean, my Gursky. Mine is in the backyard as well.
So here's a typical one.
Right, but this is not.
Oh, it's not.
No.
Oh, Jesus, I'm getting blinded because it's going this way.
So it's a swale, and we can line that swale.
Right, so you got a swale. I apologize. I was not seeing this end.
Yeah, it's our assertion that both of our infiltration basins are not within 100 feet of any of the wells, surrounding wells. There's a requirement by Massachusetts under Title 5, 350, 310 CMR 15 for separation between septic systems and infiltration practices. It's 25 feet. We've shown a 50-foot setback around the septic systems. And there's two septic systems that are within 50 feet of the infiltration basins. And those specific septic systems are where we concentrated our mounding analysis to show that there's no detrimental impact from groundwater mounding with regards to those systems. And I'm, Mr. Chairman, happy to go over the mounding analysis.
Okay. Would you?
Certainly. So essentially what mounding analysis is when you, here I had said that when it rains, all of the water that lands on this site goes into the ground. And we're not going to make it rain anymore, but we are going to concentrate where that water goes into the ground in the location of the two basins. So when you do that, there is a concern that you will change the groundwater in that, underneath that system. This is more of an issue with large septic systems because you put water into a septic system every single day. You only put water into these infiltration basins when it rains. And again, they're designed to go up to the 100-year storm, 8 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. But still, there will be a period of time in which the groundwater will mound underneath these infiltration basins. And we model that. And we look at the porosity, the permeability of the soils underneath. We look at where the water table is. We estimate where maybe depth to ledges, which gives us what's known as the saturated thickness, the depth of soil between the groundwater and ledge. And that tells us kind of how much that water table can take before it starts to mound up. So when we do this mounding calculation, we get two things. We get a peak elevation of the groundwater mound directly under the system, and the model knows how long and wide the infiltration basin is. And then how, in a bell curve shape, how that peak mound moves laterally to the left and right, in all directions around that. And where we want to look is what happens when we reach that septic system over here. If we, now in this system's case, the groundwater mound is 3.4 feet. In this other one, it's 2.2 feet. But that drops off significantly as you move away from the center of the infiltration basin. And in both cases, we estimate that the mound underneath those septic systems will be less than 1/10 of a foot. Now understand that mound is not permanent. It's something that fluctuates as it rains. It recedes because it's not being loaded every single day. And we looked at the elevation of the starting groundwater in each case, and what the 3.4 and the 2.2 were, to see that they didn't come up into our system and impact the functionality of the system. And we looked at the septic systems, and we conservatively considered that the septic systems, or the top of the systems, were 3 feet down, because Title V doesn't allow you to bury a system more than 3 feet. System needs oxygen, and that oxygen comes from the topsoil. So conservatively saying that those systems were 3 feet down, we compared the 10th rise, and it's well under the systems. So it won't have any impact on the functioning of the system. And that was the concern that the neighbors had. Ty and Bond reviewed our assumptions and parameters, making sure that we were as conservative as we needed to be. And they sent an email to the board today concurring that they agreed with our analysis.
And again, I'm going to read that email, if that's okay. And if it's not, then I'm going to read it anyway. Basically, this is again from Jean Christie. I wanted to follow up on an item that I did not discuss in my recent review letter for the Two Summers Road project. The groundwater mounding analysis provided with the applicant's response dated on August 24th, 2021 was reviewed by Ty and Bond with no further comment. The analysis indicates that, as expected, a groundwater mound will develop below the proposed infiltration systems. However, that mound is not anticipated to impact nearby septic system operations. We know that the leach fields located in the areas near the proposed basins are located at higher elevations than the bottom of the basin, which provides further separation to and impact from the anticipated groundwater mound.
So my name is John Christie. I actually in the corner lot on Cedar Oak Lane. And I think that's where you're pointing to the infiltration system right there in the bottom corner.
Come down, yeah,
right
to
there.
the southwest corner. You got it, right in that.
Yeah, so my well is in the backyard. Was that also analyzed when?
So they took a conservative approach when they did their modeling. And it was backed up by Ty and Bond, the town's engineer, saying that it will not affect your septic system.
No, it's my well.
Your well, it will not affect that,
Okay.
okay?
Excuse me, but I don't see the Gursky well shown on the plan.
Exactly. That's what I was saying. It was never even split that.
Okay,
That's what I was.
okay. So
16-foot wells are too.
will you go back and evaluate?
Yeah, another comment about shallow well.
Can you just show on the map where the 16-foot wells are located?
I don't know where they were located. Someone
came up to me after a meeting and said that they had a 16-foot well, so I thought it was worth bringing up that.
Do you live in that area? Do
I do.
you know what your well is, where your well
I
is?
do know where the two shallow wells are, but if they're doing the testing, then wouldn't that be part of their research?
They, I don't understand your question.
I
Go
think she's,
ahead.
I think she's saying.
Let her speak.
Nobody came to my yard or asked.
They don't need
my
to.
well was.
You have it, it's on record.
Well, that's
Oh,
what I'm
I don't
asking.
think your record's all too straight, to be honest with you.
Okay, then we've
And I
got a
don't think
problem.
I'm the only one here who believes it.
That's fine. What can I tell you? We've got,
Right.
Don, you got a problem with your records.
I don't know about that.
No,
You got that.
not me, not me. That's not my department. So you went into the building department or Board of Health and.
Board of Health.
Yep. Okay.
So you were, and you were looking at the wells that are within a certain distance,
We
right?
looked at all of the wells for all of the properties.
So
Yeah, we put them on the plan.
if they were within that,
If the Gursky's well in the Board of Health was shown further than 100 feet away and it's not shown on the plan, then
that's why.
that's why. But I will check it to see, and then if need be,
It's definite, it's in my backyard.
we'll come out and with permission locate it.
All right,
I have a question.
go ahead, one more.
Mark
Nate, I need, what's it?
305 Bennett Road. So you're locating all the shallow wells on all the abutting properties, correct?
I'm not.
Well, they are. And the question that I have is that all the abutters who do have shallow wells, and you are locating their wells on their property. And yet, if they have the need to drill another well, then they are not going to be entitled to push it any further back on their property, because they will be impacting this development. So the question that I have is, why is the infiltration system not 100 feet away from the property line? So that if she does, or any of the abutters do find the need, that they only have a shallow well and they want to put in a deep well, that they are entitled to do so on their own property. But right now, you are restricting the use of their land, because they're going 100 feet from the wells that are on people's property. If they have to put a new well in, because it's a shallow well, then they won't be able to move it because they'll be impacted by the infiltration system. Is that not correct?
Very good point.
Might respond, Mr.
Time out. One person. Okay.
Understand the requirement for the 100-foot separation between well and infiltration system comes from Mass DEP's Stormwater Handbook in the design of an infiltration basin. It's a recommendation. What the genesis of the recommendation is, we can only guess what DEP was thinking when they said, we recommend that you put these infiltration systems 100 feet away from wells. There is not a requirement when you put a well in for a separation to a infiltration basin. So there would be no preclusion. There would be no, Board of Health wouldn't say you can't sink the well there because you don't meet this setback from a neighbor's infiltration basin. What we believe from the standpoint of water quality is that we are treating the water before we put it in the ground. And then the ground has a great capacity to further treat the water. It's still rainwater. And the reason that we treat rainwater is because it can come in contact with things that are in the air that fall on the ground and things that happen in parking lots that, we don't like, oils and greases and things like that. So these requirements are basically put out for any paved surfaces, regardless of the intensity of use. This is not an intense use. It's not a parking lot. It's access to self-storage facilities. There will not be vehicles coming and going all the time. If you think about a Walmart or a high-intensity parking lot, with turnover of many different cars that you don't have any impact or any way to control, yeah, there can be a lot of pollutants. And when it rains, that rainwater gets down into the systems. Okay, but that all said, we're still treating as if it was that parking, as if it was that dirt. To take up all of the constituents that get caught in that rainwater. It gets treated by our proprietary stormwater device. It gets treated in the sediment forebase prior to going out into the infiltration basin, then it gets treated by the soil in the infiltration basin underneath the infiltration basin. So please understand that this is not something that's an absolute requirement that you shall have 100 feet to wells because you're going to put those wells in danger. Understand what we're actually putting in the ground. It's rainwater. It's the same rainwater that goes in the ground today.
Got another question.
Not right now.
I was actually just gonna respond.
Go ahead.
The reason it's hasn't been considered is because it hasn't been brought up yet. That's why we're having this process, so folks can bring up things that we haven't thought of. So I appreciate you making the comment. I don't want, people shouldn't be getting angry about this stuff. We're here to talk this out and figure out what concerns there are, so we can then address those with the design. So just wanted to say that. I appreciate the comment.
So I'd like to just reiterate, what you're saying is DEP comes with a recommendation. It is not a shall. We would like you to stay 100 feet away, but it's not a, you must stay 100 feet away. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Go ahead. Go ahead. One more.
Got another question. So zoning bylaw tells you that you're supposed to be 100 feet away from any well with an infiltration system. Don't know the number because I don't remember. So that being said, it's not a recommendation by DEP. It's in the zoning bylaw for the water quality. So I wasn't quoting something out of DEP as a recommendation. I'm pulling it out of the town of Hampden zoning bylaw. So I'm still back to the point that you're going to restrict the abutters on where they can locate a well on their own property. Because similar to if you wanted to drill a new well and you're within 100 feet of your neighbor's septic system, they're going to tell you you can't do that either by the Board of Health.
And so you're relating, and I'm not going to argue this, this is the last thing I'm going to say. So you're relating a septic system to an infiltration basin.
No,
I think
I'm not.
two of them are different.
No, I'm not relating an infiltration system to a septic system. I'm just telling
You said that they couldn't drill within 100 feet of a septic,
which is the neighbor's septic system. That's also in
any
the Board of Health.
septic, any
So-
septic system,
and any septic system,
even your own.
even their own. So you have to locate the septic system, and your new well has to be 100 feet away from any surrounding septic system, not just your own, but even your abutters. And then the infiltration system on this will do the same thing for a well, because the zoning bylaw tells you that you have to be 100 feet away. So the infiltration system should be 100 feet away from the property line, so that the abutters with the shallow wells, if they go looking for water, they can sink a new well on their own property.
I'm going to stop you there. We're going to move on. Okay. Okay. There was a question. What is the proprietary water treatment system that will be used? Meaning for your infiltration bases.
It's a hydrodynamic separator. It's essentially, simple terms, it's like a wash machine. It spins the water so that the sediments fall to the bottom and the floatables come up to the top and the clean water goes out of the side.
What a floatable.
All right. So gonna move
I
on.
have a question.
I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna move on.
You're
going to move
stepping
on.
away from the well aspect of things, which is in my
No
backyard
dumpsters
and
needed. Am I correct? I said I'm moving on. Yes. You don't like it? Too bad. Refuse and other waste disposal methods.
Yes.
Taxpayers, yeah. Treat us with a little respect.
Yes.
I just want to
Ref-
understand.
In a minute, let's go through this. Refuse and other waste disposal. You're not gonna use it, a dumpster.
Correct.
Proposed landscape features, including the location and description of buffers, screening, fencing, and plantings, including the size and type of plant materials.
I believe that's the landscaping plan on page 5.
So, Mr. Chairman, we have revised the plan in accordance with the last meeting to decrease the spacing between the arborvitae's around the perimeter of the site. And we've also changed the fence detail to have screening within the fence and eliminating barbed wire on the top of the fence.
Excuse me. Is there a reason why you're using chain link?
We could certainly, we're certainly open to suggestions. Chain link does allow us to put that screen there, and I think a neighbor had suggested we wanted to screen.
Yeah, after hearing a lot of feedback, I definitely not so keen on the chain link. I know the barbed wire was removed, but in my opinion.
Time out.
In my opinion, anything that goes in there, and this is gonna dovetail into other concerns that I have, but anything that goes in there really needs to fit in with the rest of the neighborhood. If I was a resident and my backyard ended up having a chain link fence and arborvitae's, I probably wouldn't be too happy about it either. Vinyl, some sort of white vinyl fence. If it was my house and I'm in my backyard and I'm looking at a white vinyl fence like a neighbor, I think it's a lot less intrusive than chain link and arborvitae's. And the screening is probably worse. That like the green screening that you put in is probably worse than arborvitae's. So that's something that I've heard a lot about is the appearance of the backyard. I think that a white vinyl fence consistent with, you know, New England architecture would get you a lot more goodwill and a lot more aesthetically pleasing than a chain link fence.
Would like to take that.
Sure. Maybe happy to
You
do
know,
that.
and think about that.
And I was gonna say that dovetails, I haven't actually seen conceptuals on what you're proposing for buildings. I think that's gonna be important for the board to consider. Because everybody will automatically jump to the, you know, Morton building with orange doors that most people don't want to see in their backyard. So I don't know if you guys have conceptual prepared on what the sign looks like, but I think that would be important to consider this as well.
Sure.
Good on that. The location, dimensions, height and illumination and characteristics of existing and proposed signs. Single sign,
Single sign,
lighted,
unlighted.
good enough, okay. So here we are, the alterations to any existing or new business, commercial or industrial uses table containing the following information: the maximum area of the building to be used for sales offices, businesses, or other use, industrial or other uses. So you have the rental, go ahead.
Right, so that's a good point, because that's one of the major changes that we wanted to submit to the town for your consideration tonight. So just a brief summary of a lot of the things I was going to talk about have been answered, but to give you an idea, there'll be one single entrance and exit off of East Long Meadow Road, and that's between the Polish National Credit Union and Hampden Septic. Again, that will be this roadway here that you see that's 24 feet wide. So when you come into the site, the first thing you'll see is parking for people who want to come into the office. And then you'll also see an office here, and behind that office will be the control gate. So as I mentioned at the last meeting, this is a secure site. You can't gain access to the site without a valid 4-digit code that you're provided. So in order to get access to the site, in order to get out of the site, you do need to have a valid access code. But one of the additions that we were going to make and propose to the board and to the neighborhood today was to change what we originally had proposed as a metal office building, because we took into consideration the comments from the public, we took into consideration the comments from the board, and said we're concerned about the rural character of Hampden. So one thing that we wanted to do and present to you tonight is that office building now will no longer be the standard metal office building that you can see. It's actually going to be identical to the picture that, if you don't mind if I can provide to the board.
Yes.
So again, that is going to be what you see from the street here. So instead of the metal building, we're proposing that property, which we believe is very consistent with what Polish National Credit Union has today. And is also very similar to what
Here.
what was recently approved with the veterinarian hospital. Yes. So again, we think that's an important aspect, an important change to our plan, that building will no longer be that metal building that you typically see at a self-storage facility. It will be that building that's depicted there.
And that's what I'll see from the street.
That's what you'll see from the street. Just so you know, the buildings that we're proposing will certainly give you conceptual plans of the buildings. Those buildings are actually a minimum of 275 feet off the road. So this lot line that you see here, which is Polish National Credit Union, that's 210 feet. There's an additional minimum of 65 feet from that corner to the buildings. So you're going to have 275 feet from the road before the buildings begin. But what you will see from the road, which will be consistent with the buildings that are there now, specifically Polish National Credit Union, that's the building you'll see when you pull into the subdivision.
So the storage unit height wouldn't be visible from the road or from, I mean, do you have an idea?
Yes, I do.
So far?
Yes, I do. So the buildings themselves will be single story.
Yeah.
They will be for dry storage only. There'll be no power to those units. The height will be approximately 13 feet.
Okay.
And that's something I think the board should also consider, because a standard commercial building is probably 10 to 15 feet higher. So if you look at the Polish National Building, that's approximately 25, 26 feet high. Same thing for the recently constructed Hampden Veterinarian Building. That's a standard commercial building. That's 20, 25, 26 feet in height. These buildings, again, will be on the top because their lean-tos are approximately 13 feet from grade.
And they're lean-tos or they're like gable?
We originally wanted the gable,
Yeah.
but we're going with the lean-to because we wanted to make sure that we minimize the height from the road and from our residential neighbors. We wanted, and we think the pitched roofs are much nicer, but we're going with the lean-to. That keeps the height of the buildings down to approximately 13 feet.
So, and then, I'm just trying to visualize this from the abutting residential neighborhood, they're gonna be they're gonna see the roof sloping up, I assume?
Slope, there'll
It'll
be a
slope
peak,
down towards,
down, rainwater comes down.
and it'll slope down towards
The back side of the building.
view of the resident, like, I'm basically
No.
thinking.
Nope, the height will, for example, the height will be here, so that'll be 13 feet.
Yep.
This is probably 12 and a half feet because you need
Okay.
pitch to get the water.
That's what I'm trying to figure out what the height of the roof is, that it's gonna be along this side pretty much.
So this along this side. Let's see.
So that'll probably be 12 feet along the western side.
Exactly,
And all of them are going to face the same way.
correct.
Yeah, okay.
Facing the road or facing the houses?
So the buildings that you see depicted on the plan, they'll be facing this way. So the lean-to, the high side will be here, the low side will be here.
So what about the people on?
Time out.
Meadow?
Time out. I want to know your name. You got to know your names. You got to state your names and your addresses.
All right, I'm Norm Willett, 10 Meadowbrook Lane.
One will let Meadowbrook Lane.
So see the garage doors in the front of these buildings in relation to Cedar Oak. They're gonna be facing
Away from.
away from Cedar Oak towards Summers Road,
The doors are gonna be on both sides of the buildings.
both sides of the building.
Right.
So the ends of the building are facing East Long Meadow Road, correct?
East Long Meadow
So they're
Road
gonna
and our
run-
residential.
They're gonna run
above.
perpendicular to Meadowbrook Lane and
That's
perpendicular
correct.
to East Long Meadow Road.
That's correct, just as depicted here. So East Long Meadow is depicted here, and the buildings will be this way. And again, the height,
And
On the
and
high
what's
side
the
is
setback, what's the setback from the property line to those units? 200 feet, it's gonna be 200 feet from the road, what's the
so
setback from the
it's
property?
275 feet approximately from East Long Meadow Road.
Right,
It'll be approximately, this is 31, 24, 50,
so it's gonna be closer to the houses on Meadowbrook Lane than it is to the road.
37.
Does that make sense?
Is approximately 50 of 60.
60 feet,
Yeah.
oh, I'd rather have it closer to the road.
Okay,
Then to the back of the
done,
house?
that's it. Go ahead,
So the
ma'am,
people-
your name.
Oh, sorry, Amy Villado, 8 Cedar Oak Lane. So on Cedar Oak Lane,
Right?
people that are abutting your, no, that's Meadowbrook Lane, Cedar Oak Lane.
Okay, yep,
No, it's the part that goes from top to bottom.
yep, understood.
So the abutters there, when they look out their backyard, they're gonna see garage doors.
You're gonna see a 6-foot fence and a very robust vegetative buffer. As was mentioned, we actually reduced the size from the arborvitae's. Originally, our proposal called for a distance of 8 feet between center to center. And we've now been reduced to 4 feet. So what you'll see is an arborvitae vegetative buffer and potentially a white vinyl fence.
So you have a 6-foot fence with 13-foot buildings.
Exactly,
So
right.
when we're in our backyard,
So you'll see probably the roof lines.
well, that would give you like 7 feet.
Yeah, approximately.
So you're having 7 feet of roof, so it's only like a 5-foot door, 6-foot door for people to come in.
Nope, these sides are up, an 8-foot door.
So we'll still be seeing garage
You
doors.
may see the top of the door
behind
until the
our
arborvitae's get
backyard.
above the,
And how
12
close
feet.
were the arborvitae's?
I'm sorry,
How close were the arborvitae's?
the arborvitae's are now 4 feet together. So they were 8, we pushed them to 4 feet. And that was based upon comments that were received from you, from the board, and from Ty and Bond.
Okay. So we've got a couple of questions here from Zoom. And again, he's going back to, this is Kevin Moriarty. No, this is what happens to the water that is retained after the water goes through the proprietary washing machine as it quote. Basically, it goes to the
Infiltration basin and goes into the ground. DEP requires that we calculate how long those ponds drain, how long it takes for those ponds to drain based on the underlying soils. And it has to be,
quiet,
it has to be
First.
within 72 hours that those ponds drain. Our calculations based on the underlying soils will demonstrate that they'll drain within 8 hours after the drain.
Okay.
May I ask a question real quick?
1 minute, please. Okay, so you're going to get us kind of, what I'd look for is a rendering like this, kind of situated with the Polish National.
Yes.
You won't see the buildings from the front. You'll see from the back, you won't, on the south side, you'll only see possibly some roof lines. You won't see garage doors. Because there's on the end caps of these,
There's no doors.
no doors there. But there's a possibility that they'll see a roof line.
Correct.
Okay, can you get,
As opposed to a standard roof line, which is 26 feet in height, as opposed to what we're
I'm
proposing.
okay with that. So the possibility, time out, the possibility is how high are the arborvitae's going to grow? What is your plan to maintain those arborvitae's?
There's a row of arborvitae's now by the Polish National Credit Union. I'd say they're probably, 18 feet.
They weren't planted at 18 feet.
No, what, you mean when we plant them? I
Yes,
think we call for a 6 foot.
yeah, you did.
6
6
foot.
foot arborvitae.
Correct.
And what was your plan? You're not going to let them grow to 20, 25 feet.
No,
So what is the plan for the maintenance of those?
right, the plan would be approximately 12 to 16 feet.
So once the arborvitae's mature,
You won't see.
you won't see any of that.
No, you will not.
This
This is the same topic
Oh,
on the rendering.
I'm
It's
sorry.
just, I don't know if you guys can model line of sight from the residence's back property line, what they're gonna see for the first 3 years. Because you've got, 60 feet and then you've got a 6-foot fence. So if you're standing in the backyard, you're gonna potentially have more coverage than just a 6-foot fence. So I think that's probably what folks are.
Respectfully, I think the
We'll
fence is
cer-
on the
we'll cer-
property lines.
So we'll certainly provide that to the board. But what I would like to just point out is this actually isn't all going to be developed all in phase 1. So what we'll be doing is we'll be building the detention basins in phase 1. We'll be installing the fence that's required by the board, and we'll be installing the arborvitae's. So my best guess would be by the time we get down here, those arborvitae's are going to be a minimum of 10 feet.
That's all right. Thank you. 1 minute, Counselor. Go ahead now. Your name?
I don't have a question right now. I did.
Wait a minute. Go ahead, Counselor.
Oh, no, I was just responding to Mr. Brasso's comment that the fence was going to be 60 feet from the property lines. And I was pointing out that from what I can see, the fence is right on the property lines. The fence and the arborvitae's are proposed to be right on the property lines.
That's the middle work, I think, right? Or is that the fence?
The fence is approximately, we have 8 feet for maintenance in the arborvitae's.
So this is the fence, I believe, 8 feet from the property line, right? And then, yeah, okay. Who had another question? Go ahead. Yeah, your name?
Vince Torkia, 34 Meadowbrook Lane. My question is, how do you, who holds them responsible for maintaining the property and the arborvitae's, as you said, you'll maintain them, make sure they don't get over 10 feet. How do we hold them to that standard? And for that matter, any standard on, cleanliness or anything like that.
Go ahead, sorry. Oh, go ahead.
I was actually, one of my things to bring up today is an O&M plan.
Right.
For the site. I was gonna ask, not only the arborvitae maintenance, but also infiltration, basin maintenance. The other site is not part of this, but there's gonna be more O&M on that one. But basically, we'd be looking for some sort of O&M, or I would be looking for some sort of O&M plan. With, some sort of periodic review on the status of that.
We provided a stormwater operation and maintenance plan within the submittal, but we can certainly also supplement that with a landscape maintenance.
There will be. We're going to ask for that. And that's O&M's operation and maintenance.
Sorry.
I have a question about the washing machine.
Your name?
Jane Bilodeau, I live in Spring Meadow Lane.
Okay.
Okay, so what do you treat the water with? Because you mentioned it many, many times, the treatment. What is the treatment? Is it chemical?
No, not at all. It's physically just, what happens is the pipe coming into the structure comes in, not in the center of the structure, but off to the side. And then inside, there's a metal washing machine tub. And the water goes into that tub and it sets up a vortex, a whirlpool, if you will. And then there's baffles that take the water out of the center of that vortex, out of that whirlpool. The floatables are, light pine needles. If there is any trash, those will float to the top. And then the sediments, the sands and whatever will get forced by the whirlpool down to the bottom. So clean water comes out. And the type of treatment is prescribed by DEP. These can be proprietary, which means a company owns a patent on the innards. There are several companies that have hydrodynamic separators, and they work all the same. These companies put their data out on their treatment efficiencies to third-party testing companies. And the third-party testing companies verifies that, what the vendor claims, what the manufacturer claims is actually true with regards to the treatment.
So how are those floatables they're screened out, so who cleans them and how do they get cleaned?
Just what the board was talking about, an operation and maintenance plan. There's going to be a requirement that operation and maintenance plan happens in the prescribed frequency. It's usually 4 times a year, there's an inspection. And if the inspector feels they need to be cleaned out at that time, they'll clean them out. If, regardless of whether they feel that they need to be cleaned out, they will be cleaned out once a month. And the way that they're cleaned out is a vacuum truck comes and sucks all of the water that's in there out, all of the sediment that's at the bottom, and all of the floatables. And they have to bring that to a prescribed place to dump it.
1 minute, go ahead.
Hi, this is in my backyard.
Wait a minute, your name?
Oh, Stacy Neeson, 30 Meadowbrook Lane. This is directly in my backyard. Is this gonna be on the inside of the fence or outside where I'll see all this happening? And I would have to worry about grandchildren back there. I don't know, is it covered up? Is it in the manhole? or how
Everything's
does that
going to
work?
be contained within the site. You won't see it.
It's inside the site, but to answer the question, it's
It's
an
outside the fence.
underground structure. It's got a manhole cover. From the surface, it looks like a manhole.
So is that gonna be in my backyard or is that inside the fence?
Inside the fence.
Towards you guys? Okay, all right, that's what I want to know.
Wait a minute.
Finally? Okay, so back to where we were a long time ago, as far as the cedar opening and the way that the units face, am I looking at the garage doors? Am I looking at, the building? What do I see? I'm at the 21 cedar opening.
You're here on the corner.
Yes.
Yep. So what you'll see is, again, if it's a vinyl fence, you'll see
Outside of that.
a
yes,
6-foot
I
vinyl
understand.
fence.
Yeah.
You will then see the arborvitaes that are replanted before we begin construction of any of the
Beyond that, what
buildings.
is-
And those will be 6 feet high. So until the arborvitaes get to 10 to 12 feet, you'll see the top of the buildings.
But before that, am I looking at the garage doors?
Yes.
Or- So I see, so now in order to access those garage doors, is that a road? that
Yes.
goes between them?
There is a roadway here.
So I have a 6-foot fence, arborvitae, a road, and then
Correct,
the buildings. That's what I get to see.
correct.
Arborvitae's, then the fence.
Right, the arborvitae's fence,
Arborvitae's,
roadway.
Then a fence,
buildings.
then it's the project. The proposed project.
Go ahead.
Jim D'Agostino, 40 Meadowbrook Lane. So you're saying there's no electricity in those buildings at all?
That's correct.
So if I was to bring my junk in at 8 o'clock at night, so what do I do? Pull my car in, shine the headlights, idle the car, open the door and have that car idling, bringing all my stuff in there? How are they gonna see inside?
There are wall packs here and they're wall packs. So this is lit up. So that's exactly how it happens now. You don't shine your light in. The site is lit. So you're able to see. Can you see all the way into your unit? At this time of night, probably not. They don't normally come after dark. But if you wanted to come after dark, yeah.
So it's
There's
gonna be-
there's no power, there's no lights, there's nothing in these
So it's
units.
gonna be the street lights that are.
Correct.
That's how they're gonna see inside.
And wall packs, that's right.
And the wall packs are 13 feet high.
Correct.
So those arborvitae's will probably never cover those lights.
Oh, I'm sure they will. Oh, the arborvitae's will definitely cover those lights.
And how many lights are on that property? How many pack lights, as you call them, are on that property?
Wall packs, probably 2 per building, I'd say.
And are they, I'm going to ask the question, are they going to be activated by motion or timers?
They will be activated by timers.
So you're talking 2 per building? How
Correct.
many buildings?
On the plan. There's 16 buildings, but again, these wall packs, you won't see all of the wall packs from wherever you are. You'll see the wall packs adjacent to the buildings. Is that what you mean?
I mean, I'm not gonna see a light 13 feet in the air. I could probably see my phone lit up 13.
Right.
Yeah, they absolutely, there'll be those lights, correct, but what we're saying, and I think what the engineer said is that we've designed the lighting such that it's dark sky, meaning light doesn't emit up, nor does it backflow onto your property. it's positioned down, it does not backflow into your
I
property.
can see it straight up.
You probably could, sure. Yep,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mr. Chairman, my brief question was only, is there associated with this operation and maintenance plan? I would assume that there would be some sort of bonding or security to ensure compliance with that plan.
I believe that we would probably ask for a report to be submitted to the building department when they do.
In terms of some sort of security and bond to make sure that they're
I
actually.
understand, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not answering that because I'm not sure what we're gonna do.
That's fair.
Um, oh, of course, yes.
The lighting's gonna be a timer,
That's correct.
so is that gonna go along with the hours of operation?
That is exactly correct. Lights out at 10 PM. So we've agreed, and I think the board had explained to us that was their preference. Our hours of operation for access to the site would be 5 AM to 10 PM. Lights go out at 10 PM.
That's all lights.
That's actually. a
Correct.
question.
Nobody can access the site after 10 PM.
Yeah, so it should think, if they're listening, they should, that question should be answered.
Can I ask a question about the centrifuge?
1 minute, okay? I think there was another question that's, no, I'm picking people that didn't ask questions. So go ahead, you in the back.
Tad Brown, I'm at 45 Meadowbrook. For the engineer, does the centrifuge, it takes out solids? There were chemicals in the water, does it take chemicals out?
Essentially what DEP believes when they came up with the stormwater regulations, stormwater guidelines, is that total suspended solids was the poster child of pollutants. That because it was measurable, because it was sort of basically verifiable, and that also because some of the other constituents, some of the other pollutants will attach themselves to the sediment, that you'll get more bang for the buck. So the requirement in Massachusetts is 80% TSS removal. There are no requirements for removal of other constituents, whether they be phosphorus or nitrogen. Phosphorus is a chemical that is found in parking lots. It falls out of the air onto cars and then off the cars. So DEP believes, and this is across the state with regards to stormwater treatment, that if we target TSS and we use methodologies that remove the TSS, we will get other constituents treated in that chain.
Wait.
Total suspended solids.
But if there's chemicals in the water, I think your answer is no, right? I'm asking if the chemicals are in the water, does the centrifuge take them out? And I think your answer is no, right?
It wouldn't matter,
No.
even if they were on the street, okay, I'm gonna explain this, because even on the street, if there was those same chemicals, I'm gonna use phosphorus, nitrogen, or whatever, okay? And they went into the storm drain on the street, they're still not gonna get removed. Do you understand? Okay,
Well,
so no
okay.
matter what, that's
But it does
why,
matter.
wait a minute, time out. That's why if you look on the town's website, okay, there is a, and again, this is a funded thing for the town, is the stormwater, and the stormwater is a DEP regulation. This area happens to be under an MS4, okay? So there is criteria there in the MS4 area.
Okay.
So it will not remove, no matter what.
But
You're
there's.
not gonna get a
let
drainage
me say
system to
this.
remove chemical.
I'm looking at this picture that nobody else can see, but when you have, what is it, 500 units over there?
I'm not sure.
Okay, how many ever units? Let's say it's 500.
That,
They're made of
just so you know,
aluminum?
that's not mine.
Okay, but they're made of aluminum, they're painted, correct?
Right.
Every time it rains, they start breaking down. Chemicals go down in there. It's a
Absolutely.
shallow aquifer. You can't take them out, and it goes in the water table. So when we contaminate that, who's gonna pay for it? Who's gonna fix it? I'm saying, you can contaminate that whole watershed there. And you're saying it really doesn't matter. It really does. Because they can't get it out, and it's way more chemicals than a standard rain.
So understand, again, the DEP, again, if I can, Their thing with stormwater is total suspended solids, and they're up to the people, okay, meaning the residents of the community, to modify their ways of doing business, whether it be application of nitrogen on your fertilizers, phosphorus and things of that nature, picking up your dog waste. I'm going to say these are all items that contaminate the water. And that's why that's why you cannot remove this, as you're saying, the phosphorus or whatever. Yes, as things age, they will break down.
So just so the board knows, what he's saying is we can't get the chemicals out of the runoff. It's gonna go into that water table. So when you are sitting around making this decision, you need to know that once that sinks in there and ruins that water, that's water for, I don't know how many, but it's a couple hundred residents.
With all due respect, the neighboring neighborhood was built in what, the 50s? So everybody had lead paint. A lot of them had PCBs in their paint.
I'm talking about now. You're talking about residents. This guy's gonna put 600 units there that are gonna break down and go in the water. That's all I'm saying. I'm not
What
trying to get into-
contaminants are you concerned about in the paint?
What's that?
Which contaminants are you concerned about in the paint?
The things that come off of that building when it breaks down, paint and aluminum,
Which contaminants? So
all of them. Everything that he's putting in there is gonna break down. Over time, it breaks down and it goes in the water.
that is
I want you to be aware of it. All of you 5 people be aware of that.
if I could actually, if we could have a discussion. What I'm trying to suggest is that the contaminants that folks believe are in the paint, they are no different than someone putting up a house. If
Well,
someone
there's
puts
a
a,
way bigger footprint, my friend, a way bigger footprint there than a house. It's 8 acres. 5 acres, sorry, 5 acres
Okay,
of,
we're gonna end this now.
okay, I want to make sure that you know. Did somebody write that down?
Time out.
with all,
That's enough.
this is actually what I did for a living for many years, was assess buildings and hazardous materials in buildings. So I'm sorry if I don't agree with you, but I believe, I don't believe that that rainwater on these buildings is gonna contaminate the aquifer in the area. I think that is a stretch.
I would get a
Time out.
second opinion. I would get a second opinion. You guys have your own guy. He's saying what he's saying, and you guys are backing it up. I think you need to get a third guy.
That's enough. We're done. Go ahead.
Mary Grissetti, 15 Meadow Lane, Hampden. So your light's going to be on a timer, so they'll go off at 10. So in one way for our neighborhood, and that would be good, the lights are going to go off. But since this proposal has come through, I've learned more about self-storage than I ever wanted to learn. And one of the major things to keep your self-storage safe from criminal activity is lighting all night long. So you shut the lights off, and that's wonderful for the neighborhood. But then you invite crime into that neighborhood because you have a completely dark area that people can get into, and criminal activity, and lots of criminal activity happen in these storage facilities.
Okay. I'll take one more question from somebody that didn't ask a question. Go ahead.
George Bulbright, I live at 44 Meadowbrook. With all due respect to the board, you're saying that the chemicals that are found on a public way that go into a storm drain are such that there's nothing we can do anything about it. But if I wanted to put my well 6 feet from the edge of the street, you would say I can't do that.
I don't say that.
Now-
Sorry, I don't control where you put your well.
Okay, but whether or not there's contaminants coming off the buildings in the rain, there's gonna be contaminants, I would imagine, from the pavement, from whatever people are storing. I know they're not supposed to have hazmat in the storage units, but you know people are gonna do it. When that stuff leaches in, it's different than me deciding whether or not I wanna pick up my dog poop or fertilize my yard. This is being put upon us in such a way that, oh, well, this is likely gonna happen. There's gonna be some change in the water table, but it's chemicals that are on a public way. I think my well wouldn't be where it is now if this structure was there before my well. I'm not being real clear, but I think I'm making my point. And back to the point this gentleman made, if these tanks, I can't put a well within 100 feet of my neighbor's septic, and I know it's not the same thing, but if I understood what he was saying, it's also in the bylaws, I can't put a well within 100 feet of these storage tanks. And that's not the right word either.
Retention base.
Retention
Or
bases.
detention,
So
whatever.
I think he's correct. You're effectively limiting what people can do on their own property if these things are too close to the property lines.
So, yeah, if I could, so if the thing that I wanna point out is these buildings can't go there because it's gonna rain and chemicals are gonna get into the ground. So then what can go there? What buildings can go there that aren't gonna release chemicals into the ground when the rain hits the paint? See what I'm saying? So this is a business district. It's zoned.
That's another issue.
No.
It's
well,
zoned for-
Time out. That's enough. We're gonna move on. No, we're moving on.
Do you want the question answered?
No, it's a rhetorical question, Jeff. You know it's rhetorical.
No, we do have an answer, so we'll be able to deal with that later.
We've got a plan, you know.
Yes. go ahead.
Going back to what you said about the lighting, that goes off at 10 p.m. There is video monitoring, correct?
The whole site is video, correct,
And
exactly
that's
correct.
24/7, and that faces the units themselves, or is it
Only-
just?
Only the units themselves, they will not face any of our residential or commercial buildings.
Okay, so the units themselves, even when hours of operation are out, will be in a video monitor.
100, absolutely.
Okay, so item number 14 is really kind of where we started a little bit here. You provided that you're asking for a waiver to not have a plan for the exterior facades. I'm asking you to give me what I'm going to conceptually see from the street. You gave me one phase of it
Yes, we'll get to-
and how it would look from the street, okay? I think, Jason, you
How about
want
from
to.
our yard? How would it look? from
Time
our-
out!
Please, excuse me.
Jason, you asked if they could provide something from the.
If they could provide a line of sight, conceptual model of what residents would be seeing from the backyard.
Okay. Can you think you can?
I assume, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll do my very best. Yeah, I think I can.
That's all we can ask for. Plans for clearing and stockpiling or removal of topsoil from the site, including whether topsoil will be permanently removed from the site. So that is in the erosion and sedimentation plan.
That is correct.
Yes.
And so what's the plan? Can you tell us?
Essentially, we're gonna use that depression to handle construction-related sediment erosion control. There'll be a perimeter erosion control set up, hay bale, silt fence, things of that nature, to contain everything on site. It's fortuitous that the site is self-contained and that everything flows in towards the center. That will maintain that. As Attorney Garvey said, as the phasing goes this way, the depression's over here, so it fits, it works. With regards to removal of topsoil, I'm assuming that will, based on the building plan and so forth, that we will have excess topsoil. We'll utilize as much as we can within the basins and the periphery. Although we most likely will have some removal of topsoil, which is standard on our commercial zone.
Okay. So I'm going to ask, we're going to go into the access and the traffic impacts. Okay, so you've done, I'm going to say, you say the nature of the use generates very few vehicle trips per day and peak hour trips. The Institute of Transportation Engineers, ITE, trip generation manual estimates peak mooring hour trips to be 0.15 trips per 1,000 square feet or 7.5 trips for this proposed 50,400 square foot facility. The afternoon peak hour trips is 0.26 trips per 1,000 or 13.1 trips. This equates to one trip every 8 minutes in the morning and one trip every 4.5 minutes in the afternoon. How reliable is the data?
I think it's very conservative. It's based on national information. The IT, what the ITE does is they basically go to build sites for all of the various land use codes or types of uses. In this case, it's mini warehouse use code 151. And they will look at facilities and count cars and look at how many cars do that, and then they'll do the calculation to put it into either per square foot or per employee or whatever the use is. It's as reliable as the data is. It's the industry standard. Every traffic engineer in the country does the same thing when asked how many people are going to come and go from this site, and most importantly, how many people are going to go during the peak morning hour and the peak afternoon hour. So we think, based on experience at the other facility, these numbers are high.
These are high.
Very high. So I'll just give you an idea. So some of the members don't know, but we are commercial developers. We've been in commercial development for over 20 years. We've done projects in the town of East Long Meadow, town of Hampden, and Springfield. One such project that we completed back in 2004 was a self-storage facility that's very similar to this. So we constructed it in 2004, and we've operated that facility for the last 17 and a half years. So the data that I was able to pull, so what I was going to tell you is that this is a control gate. So when you come in and try to get in the gate, we know what time you come in, we get a picture of you coming into the gate, and we know what you've done or what you're doing in the site by our video surveillance, and we know what time you come out. We take a picture of you coming out. So it's a very tightly controlled site. So with that said, I was able to take the data from our computer at our other site that's very similar to this. So I used a period of time, September 18th to September 24th. That's a full 7-day period. There was 206 total trips coming in and out of the gate. So that means someone came into the gate, came out of the gate 208 times in that 7-day window. That is an extremely conservative number, because I do want to explain, I did not extract any of our own personal entrance and exits to that gate. I left it as is. That's a gross number. So if you take the 206, the facility that we operate in Springfield is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you take the 206, you divide it by the number of hours that they could come in, which is 168 hours, you're at approximately 1.25 trips per day. I'm sorry, per hour. Even if I tripled that, let's say we go to 5 trips, that is significantly less than what's being generated now at the Polish National Credit Union, which is our direct of ours. Significant. I would say it's probably at least twice, potentially 3 times the number of trips. These facilities do not generate traffic at all. They just don't generate traffic. You'd be surprised. People come in, drop their items, and very rarely come back. If they come back, they check on the items, take one out, put one back in. This type of facility, in my 17 and a half years experience, is a ghost town. It is not something that generates a great deal of traffic. There was 206 trips in that 7-day window. And again, I did not extract from that data the times that we went into the facility.
With that said, the impact, how would it impact the traffic on East Long Meadow Road?
I would suggest, I'll leave that up to Joe, but I would suggest there'll be no impact whatsoever. If there's 1 trip, 2 trips, 6 trips per hour, you've got 4 parking spaces, you've got plenty of room to stack. I've never seen a stacking at the gate, ever.
When we look at impact, we look at, what's the impact at the intersection, and what does the additional trips have on nearby an intersection? And it's not even measurable as far as that future.
And if I can ask, the morning times, what was the highest loads, if you will, or in?
The,
highest number.
right, the peak hour is generally from 7 to 9.
Okay.
It's 1 hour during a period from 7 to 9. And it's a very localized situation.
And how about in the afternoon?
We didn't, in, I think it's 4 to 6. And we didn't study the surroundings to be able to pinpoint what is that peak hour on East Long Meadow. So it's, if whatever that peak hour is, this is what ITE says will generate. But as Dan said, it's most likely far fewer.
Scott Southworth, 70 Summers Road. Has anyone done a crime data
That's not,
research?
right now, we're not.
Well, I'm talking about the facility.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Crime data.
Has there been
No,
anybody done any research?
on our experience, no.
And you said you have a facility in Springfield,
That's correct.
and has there been crime there?
There's crime, very little, but I will tell you this. Unfortunately, they are robbing banks. They're robbing the pride stations in town. They're robbing everywhere. We have very little crime, correct? But it's never cascaded onto any of our commercial or residential.
But you don't have to.
Ever. Just my experience.
I have a few questions on that. When somebody comes into the gate, you said you get a picture of them, you know that they're in the facility, you know when they leave the facility. When there's staff in the buildings, do they have access to see who is still there when they're leaving for the evening, whatever time that the office closes?
That
Do they
is,
see who is still checked in the facility, and do they ask them to leave at that? Or is it staffed until 10 p.m.?
it is not staffed until 10
Okay.
p.m. It's staffed until approximately 5 p.m.
Okay,
But we can remotely see who's there. We can see what time they come in, what time they go out.
okay. Now, when it gets dark out, those cameras switch over to, I would assume, a night vision.
That is correct.
And is there any type of alarm system, should there be activity on the premises after 10 p.m., assuming they can't get through the gate, but somebody gets on, is there some sort of alarm system that will go off?
We could potentially, with the permission of the board, maybe make some of those lights that aren't abutting our residential districts. Maybe we could do a commercial district where we can have some of those lights on motion. And that would alert us to that, with, again, the permission of the board, but those would be strategic throughout the site, away from our residential abutters.
So
we
if
could do
there
that.
was somebody there after hours, you wouldn't know until video footage was reviewed the next day, should there have been an incident?
Correct.
Okay.
Unless I'm watching the video remotely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bobby Grant, 36 Weir Road. Is this proposal going to be operational 7 days a week?
That's right, yes, 7 days a week.
7 days a week. I have had the occasion to be at La Cucina's patio for dinner a couple of Sundays ago. I was amazed at the traffic on that intersection. East Long Meadow Road, Wilbraham Road, Summers, Allen Street. Unbelievable, the trucks, the motorcycles, the cars, so much traffic at that intersection on a Sunday afternoon, which is really very surprising. So I think a traffic study would be a really good idea.
Reached out on the crime issue that we reached out with police department. Yeah, issues, right. As stated in the opening statements, we did reach out to the Hampden Police Department, and there was no issue as far as crime. Okay, so I'll bet you, and I don't know, there's probably more break-ins into houses than there are into storage buildings.
That's
Now,
actually not true.
that's an opinion.
Yeah.
And we're gonna move on.
Wrong.
That's my own.
Right.
It's my own.
And if you did a lot of. if you
That's
did
enough.
research
We're
on
done.
storage
I'm not
facilities, you
gonna,
would see.
I don't need to.
Yeah,
I don't
you
need-
should.
Yes, you're right. I should. Number of curb cuts in the town shall be minimized. It's only got one.
Correct.
And that's basically on East Long Meadow Road. No cul-de-sac. one driveway per business, that's what you have. And your curb cut is at 24 feet. That is correct. Which is within the. And again, going back to what the chief said, all driveways shall be designated to afford motorists exiting the roads with a safe sight distance. Correct. So there's not going to be any foliage, any shrubs or anything else.
Not out line of sight.
And the sign will be back from that line of sight also.
Right, we have to get permission from the town to put the sign.
So you'll see where, he'll tell you where.
Exactly.
So site distance looking east is unobstructed to the intersection of Summers Road, greater than 500 feet. So the proposed development shall include safe interior circulation within its site by separating pedestrian and vehicular traffic. As you said, there's not going to be many people. Not a lot of pedestrians walking around.
No, not at all. They park and go into their unit, back into their car.
Yeah, so like you said, internal circulation is dictated by the configuration of the self-storage units, and envision people will drive to their rental unit and therefore no pedestrian traffic.
John, another question, sorry. Will there be lines anywhere within, between the buildings, within those driveways where you drive up to your doors? Will there be lines anywhere within that space?
We don't currently have them now. If that was a requirement by the board, we'd be happy to put the lines in. But
I'm just thinking of keeping cars a certain distance away from the doors, but just a question.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, in each case where a new building or a new use of more than 3,000 square feet, total floor area is proposed, or where a proposed enlargement of a building would result in the building having more than 3,000 square feet, total floor area, traffic impact statement shall be prepared. So we've got more than that. We've got 20,000 square feet of office. We got 50,400 square feet of storage. So we're going to take this and we're going to see, okay, I'm going to ask some other people, if you will, about the traffic study that you did, using the ITP, if that's a standard, and how we're going to look at that, okay? Whether we ask you for a traffic study or not. Again, adequate pedestrian and bicycle access shall be provided as follows. Really, bicycle access inside the place, pedestrian, there's really going to be none. But there is a requirement, I think, for sidewalks, believe it or not. So we'll get to that. Okay. Go ahead.
Bonnie Jeremy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Bonnie.
I could speak a little bit to the sidewalks. I was at one of the meetings that Markle had, and it appears that the town did get I believe that the town did get the grant money so that there will be running a sidewalk from the senior housing over to the senior center,
Yep, oh, senior
I
center,
believe.
good, yeah,
So they're gonna be crossing that busy
intersection,
intersection.
somewhere. Don't know exactly where, I don't know what's proposed, but in our requirements, there is, so basically here, adequate possession, it's in section 7.72. Adequate pedestrian and bicycle access shall be provided as follows. Sidewalks shall be provided between access of two adjacent properties and between individual businesses within the development. We're gonna look for that. Let me tell you right now.
What is, I'm not
The
understanding.
sidewalk
So you want
shall.
sidewalks inside here?
No, in front of the building. So in front of your property.
Oh,
running-
I'm sorry, understood.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna require that. I'm gonna
Understood.
Sure. Okay.
Excuse me,
I'm sorry, yes, ma'am.
Dee Vermet, 33 Oak Knoll Drive. You mentioned that you were closing at 10 at night, but your hours were from 5 A till 10 P. Does this mean your lights go on at 5 A?
They potentially could unless the board tells me otherwise.
Because just in concern for my neighbors, which I don't abut this, but I'm concerned for them, having these big lights go on at 5 o'clock in the morning would not be very nice.
We could certainly take into consideration that the board, if the board wanted a 6 o'clock light call, we could do that.
I think if we,
Especially
like
in
a
winter
photo
time.
cell or something, so it just goes with,
We could do motions.
the photo cell is only, it'll come on if it needs to, just based on the sun.
Yeah. Timer focus. Okay. One minute. Go ahead.
Okay.
Your name again?
You're talking to me, Jane Bilodeau.
Go ahead.
Referring to that criminal crime question, it was just, wizard storage out of, or storage units were broken into. My neighbors, one of them that got hit.
Yeah.
They hit like 50 something out of 60 units. And they got away with it.
Barbara Rice, that's what we're talking about. I have a question. How do you control what's in the
I'm sorry, could you say your name again?
Barbara Rose?
Barbara Rose?
Yes.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yep, so we have contracts and we also have monitoring when you come into the facility and when you're at the facility.
But I mean, if they're carrying boxes in, how do you know what's in the boxes?
It would be like any other business. I can only do as much as I can, so I keep on a very tight ship. I do watch who comes in, I do watch who goes out, I watch what you're storing in the unit to the best of my ability. But in any business, there's no way for anyone to be able to smuggle something into a building. So there's just no, it's impossible.
I have a question.
You've asked a minute. Sorry,
I figured.
we're gonna move
Really?
on.
No, right now, you're on 611. You already blew by 611 for performance standards. So that's what that was, on how you are going to control what is being stored in these units, which is going to
We're gonna
affect
move-
the groundwater.
We're going to,
So that's.
so you're out of order.
Okay.
I told you are we done? No more.
Even consent.
Okay,
That's an important point that he's bringing up.
I know, please. So we talked about the adequate parking right now. Proposed projects or uses must comply with parking and off-street loading requirements in section 7.5 of the following standards. So basically what we're saying is, to the extent feasible, parking area shall be located to the side or the rear of the structure.
Right, so one of the major other revisions that we made to the plan from the first to the second plan, we had some discussion with the board at the last meeting. They were concerned about outdoor storage. We've eliminated all outdoor storage, all outdoor parking. There is no outside parking allowed on the property at all. We've taken out all the parking.
Okay, so there's no more parking. The only parking that you're going to allow is behind the
office.
The office.
That's it.
And how many spaces?
4, 2 handicap, 2 non-handicap.
So in other words, per the bylaw, they're saying so many has to be, but
We're asking
we
for a
have
waiver.
Yeah. Okay. You'll have bumpers and wheel guards or whatever, so they.
Correct.
Screening and parking area screening and buffering going to be the same in behind as around the facility.
Right,
Like, yes.
the buff would be, we have the Postmaster Credit Union here to the left, and we have Hampden second to the right. If you'd want us to screen the parking, we could, but
You don't call for any vegetated buffer between the site and Polish National.
No.
Oh, okay, good enough.
You guys mentioned shielding and dark sky compliant on the lighting. Can you explain in layman's terms to folks what that means? And then the second part of that was, I don't recall seeing like a lighting plan that demonstrates what. Yeah,
Yeah, we did not provide that. We just assumed that that would be part of our submittal for a building permit. That'd certainly be a requirement in the special permit, or if you prefer us to get one to the board before the next meeting, we could do that too.
Personally, I think
Yes.
that's gonna be important, but if you could explain to folks what the shielding and dark sky compliant means.
Certainly, there's three components to light spillage, if you will. There's light that basically we have a big floodlight, and that light goes and lights the parking lot, but also spills into the abutting property. A shield will stop that from happening. It will direct the light only to where you want it to go. The second component is light spillage upward, and that creates light pollution. So a dark sky compliant light will have shielding that doesn't allow that light to escape up. And then the third is the toughest one to do, and that's whether or not you can see the lamp from a distance. Now, that light might be shielded to go down, but you could still see the lamp under the fixture. And that becomes a nuisance, if you will. It's not necessarily casting light onto your property, but you can see it. So we try to hit all three when we pick the light fixtures, and the light manufacturers are very good at this because it's always an issue. So we can provide cut sheets for both pole mounted and the building mounted lights to demonstrate that.
Thank you.
I think with the rendering that we've been kind of talking about for the neighbors will see, it might be a good idea to show the fixtures also and show. I know a lighting manufacturer can help you with this, but show kind of where the lighting, where they're, what they'll see. To show that it's not.
Good.
Yep, you're good. Okay. So what you're trying to say is that the lighting will not spill, should not spill over, or will not spill over into the neighboring properties. So you're gonna have 16-foot high poles, and you'll lay out a plan for us. That's right. For the next meeting. That's right. And what cast, how the light will be cast.
Right, there's a plan that shows numbers and it goes to 0 to the abutting property, but I'll provide that later. Okay, that's not what you're looking for.
That's what I'm looking for.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Name again.
Joe Sibilia, Meadow Lane.
Yeah.
Are you aware of LEED design? Are you familiar with the LEED certification? Well, when you made the comment earlier, you said, if not the storage container, what if? These buildings are not LEED certified, as you know. They're not LEED certified. These metal buildings are not LEED certified. If you were going to consider an alternative, you would at least consider an alternative that's LEED certified. LEED is Leadership in Environmental and Energy Design. And the United States Green Building Council certifies buildings and certain constructions that are appropriate for the environment. And these buildings are not LEED certified.
In what area would you like to see them LEED certified?
I'd like to see them LEED. Well, I don't want them at all.
No, but I'm just
I don't want them,
wondering.
but
what-
if you were gonna ask me, or you were gonna ask us, what is the alternative to that? The first alternative that is building, anything that goes there should be LEED certified. It should be environmentally appropriate. And these buildings are not.
I'm familiar with LEED certification as far as energy consumption, and that's really about it. Energy consumption or LEED certification on a.
Well, these guys, the engineer, he must be familiar. Are you LEED certified at your company? Is there anyone in here that's LEED certified? Anybody in here a member of the Green Building Council? You are?
But that doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He brings
I
up some-
can't talk anymore, Joe, so stop.
That's just one side right here, this conversation there. The alternative to an uncertified, non-green, non-environmental building is something that would be appropriate and LEED certified. And we have one expert, you could hire an expert. The town should actually have a stipulation that buildings that come up are LEED certified. Most of the communities around here require LEED certification. Thank you.
No problem. You're speaking to the planning board now. What you're talking about is buildings. That's another department in itself. Okay,
Not really.
I appreciate
It
your,
starts at the plan.
I appreciate your interests, okay, in LEED certification. But again, you're going beyond our scope of what we are supposed to do.
I have to disagree with you.
Yeah, so that's okay. Maybe the office will be LEED certified. How's that? Right.
Question on the lighting. Since we were just talking about that. I just want to be clear, are these lights?
What's your name?
Norm.
Your name?
Norm, Willett, Young Brooklyn. Are there gonna be light poles or are the lights just mounted or fixed to the building, shining
We
down?
asked them for a plan, so they're gonna.
Oh, so we don't know, we didn't hear that. I'm sorry, I missed that.
Well, they're gonna be submitting a plan with the lighting, so we'll know at the next meeting.
We can go into appearance and architectural design. You provide us with something, and again, like I said, I'd like to see something a little bit more, and you'll be somehow for the view from the residences.
As best as I possibly can.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So. I'm gonna ask, you know what, and help me out because while I'm looking for something. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Your
Amy
name
Bilio,
again?
80 Lane. The basin that's on East Long Meadow Road in between two homes. Why is that not protected? That is wide open. People that live in those homes have like direct access to a basin right next to their property. It's outside of the fenced in areas, not secured from people walking down the road. People that live in those two properties are just gonna have this right next to their home.
It's essentially a landscape feature. Day to day, when it rains, it does fill up. But again, it's designed to fill up to the highest reaches, the highest depths during a 100-year storm. In most storms, inch of rain, thunderstorm, what have you, there'll be no perceptible water in it because as the water comes into it, it will drain into the ground.
So
We don't normally, in these instances where they're designed to be dry basins, and we do the calculation that says they're going to drain in 8 hours, we don't recommend that they're fenced because a fence becomes two things. It's an attractive nuisance. Kids want to understand what's on the other side of the fence. They hop the fence and then we can have liability issues. Secondarily, when you fence them in, you might not be, you might not maintain them as much because you're not seeing them. We would rather them be very open, very attractive as far as upkeep and maintenance of them. But we don't believe that they pose any kind of a threat. That's entirely up to the board. I've had boards require that we fence these
in
practices.
Just from past history, okay. Bethlehem Baptist Church, I asked that they have a retention basin in front, right by the road. And my comment was I would have liked to have seen it fenced in. And again, to reiterate, it's a safety issue for one thing. So my feeling was that I felt, again, as a planning board, I says, well, what if somebody goes in there and drowns? But that doesn't happen. Apparently, the groundwater, it precipitates fast enough that, you know, somebody can't, or I'm sure somebody could drown but likelihood of that.
Any standing water, pond, lake, river, stream, you know, people can drown it. But it would be a different thing if it was designed as a wet pond and had water in it all the time. And people wanted to try to skate on it or do something else. But again, it's designed as a dry basin. It's designed to drain very quickly.
So I'll give you another example. There are retention basins throughout the town in all sorts of developments. And what's happened over the years is they have not been maintained, okay? In turn, DEP is going to look, coming up, they're going to look for a report from the town, okay? This being private, in your O&M, we're going to expect to see, you're going to mow it, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. So those are some of the requirements, again, in the O&M when we get to that. All right.
Oh, we're going to get to that?
Yeah, we have, what did you think? We were done?
No.
Okay,
So it's just gonna be like an open ditch right in between those two homes.
it'll be grassed, I believe.
Not a ditch per se, it's a depression.
Like the one at St. Mary's that they just put in,
Very much so.
and like right up to the road.
Go look at St. Mary's, this is the new one, okay?
Yeah.
And also, if you look, Bethlehem Baptist,
Yeah.
okay? Those two are private. Okay, if you want to look for ones that are supposed to be town-owned, is it Highland? What's the one across the street? Country Club Lane and Steepleview, both those are town-owned, okay, that have not been maintained.
No.
One minute, go ahead.
I don't have a question. When he said, what else would you like there? I think, I don't know what I would like there, but if it was not taken up from line to line, it's further away from the people and it wouldn't cause so much trouble. That's the thing. That's really a big thing because none of us have fences, and I have a mother deer that come through with her twins, and she has twin babies, and it's beautiful. I see it all the time. And if it was something that was smaller, even the wildlife could still come through. So it's not that we don't want nothing there ever. I mean, I would like nothing there never, but if something was there, if it was a smaller scale and away from our properties, that settles a lot of the problem right there.
Yes, go ahead.
You're
Your name again?
Dr. Sorry. This would be back to you in the catch basin. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry. Your name is it Joe?
Joe.
Okay, sorry, I'm Dawn. And question about the catch basins. We have one at our work, and you keep referring to the 100-year storm, but this past year, that thing has been full pretty consistently. So if you're looking at it being between two houses, that's essentially going to be a standing pond. Is that what I'm? It's meant to be dry, yes, but we have seen excessive rain. So how is that going to impact these people who have, now it has been full for.
I don't know the pond that you're speaking to.
It's not
But-
a pond, it's a catch basin that's on the corner of East Line,
Catch basin or a detention infiltration basin? Catch basin is
like the manhole.
A manhole with grates and
She's
water.
talking about a retention pond by
I'm talking
Big
about-
Path College.
Thank you so much. Yeah, what he said.
Right, I don't know the design of that because there's different designs. A retention area is supposed to retain water. A detention area is supposed to detain water.
It is
An
detention.
infiltration basin is supposed to infiltrate water into the ground. This is an infiltration basin. It's designed that way because the soils are receptive to them. So it's designed to drain, and we do calculations to prove that it drains. And if it doesn't drain, it needs to be mitigated. It needs to be addressed. And there's, within the operation and maintenance plan, there's going to be instructions for what happens if it doesn't drain in 72 hours. They need to, whether pump it out, do whatever they need to do, and then they need to get in and find the cause of what's clogging it and not allowing it to drain.
Okay, I'm gonna move on, okay, just because of time. And again, getting short on time. So this is in the Water Protection District. 6.11. Yeah, wake up, sorry.
All right.
Would you think I wasn't gonna get to it?
All right.
All right, so 6.11. Basically, I'm going to say that this falls within the use of in that district. So we had gone through some of the, if you will, calculations. And you're not storing oils, any of that stuff. We know that. So there's a big section on chemicals. But one of the things is the performance standards. And what are we going to do about ice control, ice and snow control?
We use sand.
And where are we storing snow, et cetera, okay?
We use sand only. We do not use salt because it will have a negative impact on the buildings. Snow will be stored here, and if it gets overflow, it'll be trucked out.
Okay, so no sodium chloride, no salt, et cetera, the sand, because you're only going to use sand, that will start to go into the basins, if I'm correct. Your operations and maintenance O&M plan will address that. So at a certain time of the year, during the snow melt, I want you to think about how you're going to address that, okay, in your O&M. No fertilizers, you're not gonna.
Excuse me, I thought they used to have boats there. Don't they have oil in the boats?
No, there's no boat storage.
No, they got rid of it? Okay.
So, no animals, et cetera. One of the things, and I'm having a hard time. Why didn't you use permeable pavement? Good question, or? Good question. Okay. I don't know, does everybody know what permeable pavement is? So, what?
I would assume that's water drain through it.
So let's could you speak to it, John?
Certainly.
Thank you.
I mean, permeable pavement is a stormwater practice that's been implemented with some success in the state. Essentially, it is a different mix of pavement that allows water to pass through. Underneath, you have different layers of stone and gravel, and then usually a reservoir course of stone in the bottom that allows the water that drains through the pavement to sit so that it can percolate into the ground. The problem with porous pavement is long-term maintenance.
Yeah.
And it, because the way that the pathways for the water move and are established within it, it's kind of a matrix and a maze that it goes through. So when sediment like sand gets in there, it's very difficult. They say you can vacuum that, or and if it gets bad, you can use a pressure washer on it. But what you're really doing is you're forcing that entrained sand or whatever to go further into that maze and get more falling. And then when the only solution at that point is to pull the pavement up and put more pavement down. We generally use this methodology when we don't have room to put conventional basins and so forth, and we need to dual use our paved areas with our stormwater BMPs. So we had the room, so we felt we went in this direction.
Does the site lend itself to permeable pavement?
The underlying soils do, and the configuration of the site could. There's, the other part is, with regard to porous pavement, is the pavement doesn't hold up very well to turning of tires. So all of these maneuvers for cars at all of these corners will most likely have rapid deterioration of the pavement, the pavement structure.
Go ahead. I personally am not a huge fan of the idea of permeable pavement or permeable pavers, simply because of the maintenance issue. If it's not upkept, if it's not well kept, it lends itself to off-site discharge of stormwater. And
There's no backup plan.
right, so if it fails, and water goes off-site. And it's a great idea. People really like the idea, but let's say it's not Mr. Garvey 5 years from now, and the permeable pavers fail, and the person doesn't maintain it well, and now you've got stormwater going off-site impacting the neighbors. It's just could potentially lead to a big problem getting that situation rectified.
And quick question, what's the life cycle on that? I mean, I guess I should direct this to you, but what's the life cycle on permeable asphalt?
It's highly dependent on the quality of the install, and there's not enough data to really say. And because
Any back of the envelope notions of kind of span?
it's
3 years to 10 years? or-
probably half of the life of conventional pavement, if not a third of it.
It's usually something that folks use when they don't have enough real estate to use traditional practices, sort of like when you're trying to, if you don't have enough space or the right type of soils to put in a standard leach field, they have these Cresby systems that are the latest and greatest thing that have been out for 10 years, but nobody really knows if they last 30. You know what I mean? So that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah, it is, and also the turning movements of the vehicles and the intensity, that there's so many factors that go into the life expectancy of the pavement. We have to come in many times when pavement fails early and forensically try to figure out why. It's usually because something happened to it and water started to get in it, and freeze thaw starts to crack it. Once it starts to deteriorate, it's also pretty rapid.
Sorry, there's also the possibility that the permeable pavement would also affect the structure of the, I'm saying the foundation. I don't know, I believe you're probably going to do slab on grade.
Right.
So if that water gets under there and starts to freeze thaw, you'll have structural issues also.
Could have some issues.
And it is more maintenance intensive than the conventional, I'm saying, storm drain system that's being proposed.
Right, and it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. You don't know it's failing until it fails. Here, as we talked about the maintenance on these infiltration ponds, we can monitor that. It rains. How long did it take for that pond to empty? You know, it's 3 days later and the pond's not empty. That's going to key us immediately into starting to dissect that. That's not going to manifest itself into a problem that affects other people, because there's so much storage there. So we can immediately get into it, begin to assess the problem, fix the problem, put that system immediately back into play. If the porous begins to fail, now it immediately starts to impact the abutters. Then we have to tear it all up, and we just feel that if we can go conventional, we go conventional.
Okay, all right. I mean, I need to better understanding of it, and I think you've approached that subject with me. Any other questions on it? So So basically, one of the performance standards in the water protection district is for commercial and industrial uses to the extent feasible run off impervious surface, which we have, shall be recharged on the site, and your projections are this will not go off site.
No, 100% of the stormwater will stay on site and be recharged.
It's not going into river streams, et cetera, or any other surface bodies of water. All basins and wells shall proceed by grease and oil traps.
Yep, we'll have deep sump hooded catch basins, and the deep sump hooded catch basins have a deep sump. And that is our first line of defense in capturing sediment. And they also have a hood, and the hood is basically a neck, elbow inside, so that if there is any oils or greases in the water, it floats to the top and the clean water goes out. So that's our first defense. Second is the hydrodynamic separator, which again separates sediments and solids in a kind of different way. Third line is the sediment forebays in each of the areas, and that just a sediment forebay is an area for water to sit for a little bit and settle out. And then finally, it goes into the infiltration basin, and that actually provides additional treatment through the interface between the water and the soil underneath the infiltration basin and the vegetation that's in. So we feel that we far exceed the requirements. One of the requirements is that we provide at least 44% total suspended solids removal prior to the infiltration practice, and we far exceed that. Our hydrodynamic separators alone remove the 80%. We get 25% for the catch basins. We get 25% for the sediment forebed. So we're well over the 44. We're fully beyond the 80 by the time we get to the infiltration basins.
Now the question is, what's the standard for MS4 right now? Is it 80% or 90%?
It's going to be 90%.
It is not there yet, is it? Will the infiltration basin,
Our combination of the 4 BMPs will get us above that.
will be above 90? So you're well within the standard. The other question is infiltration systems greater than 3 feet in depth shall be located at least 100 feet from drinking water wells and shall be situated at least 10 feet down gradient and 100 feet up gradient from building foundations to avoid seepage problems.
We meet those criteria.
You do. Okay. Infiltration basins, trenches shall be constructed with a 3-foot minimum separation between the bottom of the structure and the maximum groundwater elevation.
We meet that.
Right. Seeing the time that we have, I'm going to ask, because we're not going to finish this again tonight. Okay, I don't plan on finishing it. Hopefully, don't know. We'll have to see. But a recap. We'd like to see the lighting plan. Anything else?
Conceptual models of the buildings, line of sight, neighbors.
Landscape plan.
Get the O&M,
For landscaping, as well as snow and ice removal.
Yep. We're gonna check the Gursky well and make sure we've got that located properly. We'll review the Hampden zoning bylaw with regards to that 100-foot setback. Change the plan to white vinyl fence.
Check the Grosky well.
he did say that. Yes. Was that your question?
Yeah.
Okay. When do you want to continue? Getting tired of seeing me?
No, that's fine.
Yeah. So I'm going to be honest with you. Here's the dates.
Yes, please.
The 13th, October 13th or the 27th.
Are those Wednesdays?
They are
Wednesdays.
I'm sorry.
13th or the 27th.
Actually, respectfully, sir, I'm not available on the 13th. So if I could ask.
We're going back to a schedule on it. Grab somebody to replace
13th works for us.
13th.
Oh. Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not.
Well, then you,
No,
that can't happen, sir.
I'm sorry, it's going to. It's the 13th. We're going to sign it up right now.
Wow.
Respectfully, sir, you're required to consider our concerns just the same as theirs.
He just ignored us.
I sure did. Just ignore you. This is what you have to say.
That's not right.
And you want.
That is
may
not
be
right.
No, but
That
our
is not
timing
right.
is
We are
just as important as
citizens
theirs,
here.
Your Honor.
I refute that.
We are residents of Hampden. He's so the early meeting on the 13th. Our order is visibly 13th, so he made it the 13th. He said it doesn't matter, it's the 13th.
Recall.
Respectfully, can we check the calendar to see if people are available on the 27th?
This is it. Sorry.
Wonder if he could do it on the 13th.
That is really unfair.
I don't.
Okay, respectfully,
This isn't fair.
would you
It's not
agree,
fair.
would Mr. Garvey and his engineer agree to the 27th?
We did postpone. We asked for, if you remember, you were on vacation in August.
Right.
Correct.
And we kicked it over to September.
Correct.
I just was conferring with the engineer and the 13th works for us. It may or may not be completed on the 13th, but at
Does
least
the
we want an
20, does the
opportunity. to present.
27th work for you?
It does not.
Okay.
Understand that
Wow.
these are the applicants.
Can I ask what
And I
the
understand
engagement
your
is on the
concern.
13th?
That's why I send somebody else.
Right, but our constituents are equally entitled to be heard with the same measure of respect as the applicants. It's clear in the case law, and
That's-
failure to do
That's
so makes
fine.
it completely appealable.
That's appealing.
If he couldn't make it, it would be.
Why don't we go work it out to talk about
That's
it?
why the.
Can
town
I
hall
ask-
is here.
That's why
What
we're
is
here.
your engagement on the 13th?
That's not something I'm at liberty to share.
So again, the 13th it is.
Excuse me, I have a question.
No, we're,
Well, I do have a question, and this is a public hearing. And my question is, the other members of this board, you are gonna allow that to happen? We are a citizens group that are opposing this project, and we have a right to be heard. And I don't know how a chairman can do that to the citizens. Do you work,
you can
excuse me, sir, do you work for the developers? Or do you represent the Hampden residents? Is what I want to know.
So
It's a
you're,
valid question.
I want to know how you can sit here and how the rest of you cannot say that's not right. You know what we've done over the last month.
so
For you to tell us that you're not going to allow us to have any voice in this?
I didn't say that.
Yes, you did. We have legal representation.
So you can represent yourself. What you did tonight. I listened to
Respectfully,
you.
That's not how, that's
That is
not how
not.
it stands.
What,
That's not how it stands. They are entitled to have legal representation for them at the
Then,
meeting.
like I said to you, counselor, make arrangements.
It's not my job to find somebody else to represent them. And respectfully, that's something that needs to be considered on and voted by the board.
Okay,
Perhaps Mr. Garvey could make a concession,
We could
since
go to
he
the
is gonna
12th.
move into our neighborhood.
I am more than,
Go to the
I'm
12th.
more than happy to adjust by a day or so.
Can we
That's,
go to the
would you like
12th,
to
he
vote
said?
on this? Vote on either the date of the continuance.
Well, there may have just been a discussion of potentially
The 12th.
The
having an
12th.
agreed upon date. I don't know.
So I don't have a problem with that. That's why if you have a date, let's hear it.
would the 12th
Whatever
work,
the board would suggest.
would the 12th work for you?
That's a Tuesday.
I
It's
can do-
second Tuesday.
Yeah.
Can do
I have, just so you know, I will tell you where I'll be on the 12th. I do represent the city council in the city of Chicopee. We have a standard zoning committee meeting on Tuesday, the second Tuesday of every month.
And I know this was a problem for you previously.
Correct.
And I heard it. You had said this before. since the council here is not forthcoming and not willing to divulge the information.
That's
I-
nobody's
I-
business
no,
but mine.
I don't need to, I don't want to know, but you are a citizen, you can represent yourself, you can speak for yourself.
No,
You
they are
did tonight.
entitled to legal representation.
They are entitled to that, you're right, but they can also speak for
But
themselves.
if you don't make accommodations to allow them to have legal representation, then you're in violation of the public meeting law.
Okay, good, take me to court.
No, that's not appropriate. That's not appropriate at all.
Say to do that.
And at the same time, we are talking about making concessions. I happen to not be available on the 13th. I can be available on the 14th. I can also be available most other days around that time. We're asking for simple,
So our
common
regular
sense
meetings, our regular meetings are the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month.
Right, we're here Tuesday today.
We made we made an agreement. And again, we made the agreement to meet on this date.
right, and
It-
that was
it was-
because of
it
their
was-
concerns.
And again, because of you and Mr. Garvey, I think we put you out. You had said this on a Tuesday.
Correct.
So
You didn't
again,
ask
he was
us
here.
last time.
He forgave. And again, I'm going back to my board. Would you like to vote on it? No, I'm asking the board.
Yeah, you're giving him like a 3 hours of time, I think our lifetime. that we're
Yes.
looking at. This is something that when it goes through, we have no say.
We're looking at the board.
The only
Can you
thing
give
is
us another
when-
date, somebody?
This is our home.
When Jason thanked Mark for giving a question that he didn't know about.
Time out. I'm asking the board.
Yeah.
Can the 14th work for you, Mr. Garvey?
Wait a minute, before that, I want to know about the rest of the board.
I'm not trying to deny them the right to counsel. I'm more than happy to answer his questions and concerns.
Mhm.
Perhaps he could present some tonight if the board would allow him to do so. So I can prepare for what he's arguing to the board. So we don't have to continue multiple times.
At this point, we're entitled to equal time. I certainly don't plan to take that, but at this point, we've been going for close to 3 hours. They've been-
I've heard from your constituents stuff.
No, but you haven't heard from me.
Very good. So the 14th, you'll take the whole.
No, I have no intention to do that. I intend to be brief. I would like to open as opposed to opening with them. Although if they'd rather begin for 20 minutes, half an hour with their adjustments, that's completely fine. I'm trying to be reasonable. That's all I'm trying to do.
Not to be able to.
Go ahead.
What's the question? Could you prepare something prior to the 14th so that when we come in on the 14th, we're not?
I've already prepared something that I've distributed to everybody. It's in the manila envelope.
Which we just got this afternoon, so we haven't had time to
Yep.
consider. So
That's correct.
so that's what we have to digest for by the 14th, or do you have other issues that came up during this meeting? And if you do.
I may have some other issues that have come up, and I will provide some sort of submission before the 14th so that you can consider that.
With that
But
list
the primary consideration is this presentation that I've prepared that contains all of the case law as well as factual grounds for immediate denial beyond the improper, the improper application that I'll also raise at the same time. The other prime consideration that really needs to be addressed is the failure of this project to meet the setback requirements at all. They have gone right to the property lines, and the definition in the bylaws of setback is 2.116.
I know.
Can I also
The
address
last one,
that?
It's not the last meeting. If it's in this packet, we will digest it and take a look at it. All I'm asking for is he's asked if he could have some sort of warning, or not warning, but.
And he has
discussion ahead
a
time
copy of,
what-
he has a copy of the same information that was
Right,
provided to the
so
board.
if there's gonna be other issues, all I'm asking is if there's gonna be other issues that came up from tonight's meeting, if that could get provided to the board at least a few days before we have the meeting on the 14th, so that we have time to look at it, so we're not coming in here and looking at, an inch of paper 5 minutes before the meeting.
Right, and the vast majority of that paper is case law that is simply for reference. I've provided brief citations to it within the packet that provides all the detail that you need. And the cases are just there as additional backup if you want to go into it. And I would also point out that We didn't receive a copy of these plans until we walked in. If I'm going to be asked to provide responses, then I'm going to need copies of all of the submissions from the applicants beforehand.
These are publicly available, so you can grab these from us. So I'm gonna.
We're trying to
Personally-
manage costs as much as possible.
No, I understand that. But it's just my opinion, it's a little bit of a stretch to provide copies to the public without them. I mean, they're publicly available to go in and review at the office.
How was it supposed to know when there was new copies?
Right, he has my email address. He can send me any documents that he submits to the board, to me, completely independently, and we can arrange something so that we're working it that way. Again, I'm trying to be reasonable, and it's important and it's critical that the board take our concerns at equal footing as the applicants. I represent approximately 500 residents who have signed a petition objecting to this. And so respectfully, the board represents the town and the constituents. And so what I've seen is a very measured bias towards the applicant with the idea that they're somehow entitled to this project. And so in terms of the approach,
Nobody's entitled to anything.
but the way that you have treated me, Mr. Chairman, has been extremely adverse, and I'm not adverse to you at all. I'm trying to present you with valid information that is required for you to consider so that whatever appeal gets taken from this, whether it's by them or
I'm
us,
sorry,
stands.
I'm sorry I hurt that feeling that in all reality, I picked through the audience and I asked them. And I recognized you when you had to speak, okay? I did. I recognized you all the way through this. I might have muted you and shortened what I wanted to hear from people because there is a lot of.
And that's
people to listen
understandable.
to. And there's a lot of stuff to get through.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so I want to keep moving this along. It's 9 o'clock at night. We've been here, these people have been here 3 hours.
Right,
okay?
and I'm
I'm
trying,
hungry.
right, and I'm trying, just so
I
you
get
understand.
angry when I get hungry.
I understand that, and respectfully, we got off on the wrong foot today because there was a disagreement over a procedural issue, and all I was doing was preserving the record for appeal purposes. I was not challenging you, I was not challenging the board's authority, but I need to do my job, which the constituents are entitled to have me do, and that's all that we're trying to do here. And so if we can get back on that cooperative footing, which I'm trying to do, that would be great and would be much appreciated, I think, by everybody.
So I got 2 people on the 14th, Madison, is that a problem?
If we could do it at 6:15 again, for the 14th, that would be very helpful.
Is that okay? 6:15, Counselor?
Yes.
6:15.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Jason, what you were saying to Mark, thank you for that. Okay, all right.
Yes, I will.
Thank you all for your patience. Appreciate it.
Listen, hold on, people. Listen. Woo! I need a vote to continue the meeting until October 14th at 6:15.
Chairman, I move that we continue the meeting until October 14th at 6:15.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. This meeting will continue. What's yours now?